After my sister passed away, my heart went out to her two motherless children. I divorced my husband, left my own son behind, and married my brother-in-law. I devoted myself to raising my sister's two children, nurturing them into accomplished adults. After they had settled into their own lives and careers, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had assumed they would care for me in return, but to my shock, they said, "You're not our real mother. We have no obligation to look after you." In desperation, I sought out my biological son, only for him to coldly shove me out the door, saying he had his own stepmother to care for and wouldn't bother with an outsider like me who had abandoned him. Consumed by despair, I plunged into the river and met my end in the bitter cold of winter. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at that moment, my sister on her deathbed, clutching my hand, begging me to marry her husband and care for her two children. The icy river water, carrying a bone-chilling cold, rushed relentlessly into my mouth and nose, snatching away my final breaths. In my fading consciousness, the cold and slightly impatient faces of Tyler and Chloe, the children I raised as my own with every ounce of devotion, alternated with the image of my biological son Noah's door shutting without hesitation. "You're not our real mother. You have no obligation to us. I have my own mother to take care of. Please don't come by anymore." Obligation, take care of, what bitterly ironic words. I spent my whole life embodying those two words, only to be met with betrayal from all sides in a death march into winter's embrace. A suffocating sensation violently yanked me back from the abyss of despair. Chapter 1. I broke into a fit of violent coughing, as if the river's foul stench still clung to my lungs, but the anticipated chill didn't last. Instead, it was replaced by a familiar scent, antiseptic blended with a faint mustiness. My hands touched rough but dry sheets. In the dim yellow light, the walls were peeling and the furniture was worn. This wasn't the riverbed, nor was it the underworld. This was the bedroom in my sister's house where I often came to help out. Many years ago, Syra, a voice, frail to the extreme yet filled with a desperate longing, called out from beside the bed. My head turned stiffly, my heart seized as if by an invisible hand. On the bed, my sister Olivia, her face sallow and eyes sunken, was mustering the last of her strength to stare fixedly at me. Her hand, gaunt as a twig, gripped my wrist with surprising force, a strength as faint as the last flicker of her life, yet stubbornly unyielding. The scene, the conversation, even the despair and the smell of medicine hanging in the air, all perfectly mirrored a deeply etched moment from my memory. I came back to the moment when my sister was critically ill, holding my hand, begging me to take on that life-altering heavy responsibility that ultimately pushed me to the brink. A wave of shock and absurdity washed over me, leaving me chilled to the bone and momentarily frozen. "Syra, I'm not going to make it." Olivia's breathing grew labored, each word seeming to take immense effort. "What worries me most are Tyler and Chloe. They're still so young. They can't grow up without a mother." Her tears traced a path from the corners of her eyes, mingling with the sweat-dampened hair at her temples. That heart-wrenching, pitiful look had once pierced the softest part of my heart like the sharpest needle, the part filled with reluctance at my sister's impending departure and anxiety over the future fate of my two young nephews. It was this very ache in my heart that clouded my judgment back then, leading me to make a decision that would ultimately ruin my own life. "Your brother-in-law, Arthur, he's a decent man, but men can be careless. Not so good at taking care of children. If a stepmother comes into the picture, I'm afraid the two children would suffer." Olivia's grip tightened, her nails digging into my flesh. "Syra, you're the only one I trust. You have a kind heart and treat the children well." My eyes snapped open. She took a ragged breath, her eyes burning with desperate urgency as they locked onto mine. "I'm begging you, marry Arthur. Take care of Tyler and Chloe for me. Raise them right. I'll be eternally grateful." Even from beyond the grave, those same words, unchanged and haunting, echoed in my ears once more. If this were the old me, the soft-hearted soul who valued family above all else, I would have already been in tears, clutching my sister's hand and agreeing without a second thought. But I'm not anymore. I'm a ghost clawing my way back from hell, a walking corpse hollowed out and frozen to the core. I've lived the cruel lie that virtue is its own reward, and felt the bone-deep chill of being cast aside like trash by my own flesh and blood. Tyler and Chloe, the children I gave everything for, even abandoning my own, shattered my last shred of faith with their casual, cruel dismissal. "You're not our real mother. We owe you nothing." This, when cancer had left me most vulnerable, and my Noah, the son I carried for 10 months and brought into this world, when I abandoned him to play the role of devoted aunt and doting stepmother to others. I was the one who carved that deep wound into his tender young heart with my own hands. Years of distance have made us strangers. When he calls me an outsider, isn't that just the bitter fruit of seeds I myself planted? My sister's pleading, which now reaches my ears, no longer sounds like a final wish but a curse opening the gates of hell. As I looked into my sister's eyes, filled with expectation and moral blackmail, The frozen wasteland of despair in my heart ignited for the first time with flames of resentment and rage. Why should I sacrifice my life, my happiness, and everything I have to pave the way for someone else's child? Why should my kindness and soft heart become excuses for others to drain me dry and discard me when I'm no longer useful, just because I'm kind-hearted, just because you only trust me? Then who will care about my Noah? Who will give a damn about whether I live or die, Syra? Say something. Seeing my prolonged silence and unfamiliar gaze, Olivia grew frantic. She shook my wrist urgently. I'm begging you, all right, just grant me this final wish. Tyler and Chloe can't be left with no one to care for them. Her weeping grew even more heart-wrenching, as if my refusal would be an unforgivable sin against heaven itself, cutting off her family's only means of survival. In a past life, those sobs would have shattered my heart, but now, I find it utterly ironic. I slowly withdrew my hand, the movement subtle yet carrying an undeniable firmness. A few faint red marks remained on my wrist, reminding me that what had just happened was not a dream. I met my sister's startled and slightly panicked gaze, my voice unnervingly calm, even carrying a chill as if I had just emerged from an icy river. Sis, I said clearly, enunciating each word deliberately, your child certainly can't be left unattended. A flicker of hope ignited in Olivia's eyes, but my next words made that light instantly freeze and shatter. But, I said, looking at her with unprecedented clarity and coldness in my eyes, their father's name is Arthur. I paused, ignoring her suddenly frozen expression, and continued in that matter-of-fact yet cutting tone, and I am Noah's mother. My words hit Olivia like a block of ice. Her face, gaunt from illness, instantly drained of its last trace of color. Her lips trembled as if she no longer recognized me at all. Syra, what do you mean? Her voice grew shrill, laced with disbelief and offended anger. Noah has his father, he has his grandmother, but Tyler and Chloe, all they have is that useless father. Arthur, what about the future? How am I supposed to rest in peace? In our past life, she used that no one else is reliable. Only you can do it. Logic to bind me tightly to the altar of morality, as if my refusal to sacrifice would be an unforgivable sin. But this time, the rope that bound me didn't seem so tight anymore. I could even feel it clearly, somewhere deep inside me. A place that had been tense and suppressed for so long went click and finally loosened. Sis, I said calmly, even bending down to tuck in her blanket. A gesture that once held warmth but now felt like a rehearsed, distant motion. The children are Arthur's own flesh and blood. He is their legal guardian. Raising them is his responsibility, not mine. I lifted my gaze, meeting her slightly bulging eyes that were wide with agitation. As for Noah, he is my own flesh and blood. I'm his mother, and raising him is my responsibility. You, Olivia's chest heaved violently, her finger trembling as she pointed at me. How could you become so heartless? So selfish? We're sisters. Are you just going to stand by and watch your two nephews? I do care about them. I cut her off, my tone still even but every word crystal clear. As their aunt, I'll grieve for them when they lose their mother. If they ever need help in the future, within my means, I'm willing to lend a hand. But, I emphasized my words, crushing any unrealistic hopes she might harbor. This absolutely does not mean I'm going to abandon my husband and my son to take over your life and your family. These are two entirely different matters. Take over my life. Olivia seemed stunned by those words, breaking into a violent coughing fit that racked her entire body. An unhealthy flush spread across her face. I'm dying. What life do I have left? Syra, I'm begging you. I'm pleading with you to give my two children a chance to survive. That plea for survival again. Then what about my chance to live? What about Noah's? In my past life, it was this very word, survival, that crushed me. That broke my spirit. I thought I was giving two motherless children a chance at survival, but little did I know I was pushing both myself and my own son toward a dead end. The hospital room door was gently pushed open, and my brother-in-law Arthur walked in holding an enamel mug. He looked somewhat younger than I remembered, but the lingering sorrow and timidity etched between his brows hadn't changed a bit. He must have heard some commotion outside. As he entered with a cautious and slightly awkward expression, setting the mug down on the bedside table, he mumbled hesitantly, "Olivia, have some water. The doctor said you shouldn't get too worked up. Syra, you're here too. In my previous life, this seemingly honest man shamelessly enjoyed everything I contributed after I married him. He dumped all household responsibilities and the care of our two children entirely on me. Never once truly standing up for me when Tyler and Chloe spoke disrespectfully or treated me with cold indifference. He would always mumble things like, 'They're just children, don't take it to heart,' or, 'They lost their biological mother, have some pity on them.' Wasn't his silence and indulgence exactly what fed those two ungrateful wolves as they grew up?" Olivia latched onto this like a lifeline and immediately wailed to Arthur, "Arthur, listen to what Syra is saying. She refuses to help us, she's abandoning Tyler and Chloe." Arthur wrung his hands, glancing at his agitated wife and then at my expressionless face, looking even more flustered. "Well, you see, Syra, your sister, she had no other choice, brother-in-law," I said directly, cutting to the chase. "What my sister means is that I should divorce Thorn and marry you instead, so we can raise Tyler and Chloe together. Is that it?" The words were brutally frank, slicing through that veneer of sentimental ambiguity like a scalpel tearing away a flimsy veil of propriety. Arthur's face flushed instantly, he averted his eyes, unable to meet my gaze, and muttered under his breath, "Your sister, she's just worried about the children. I understand how you feel as a mother," I said calmly, "but this request is unreasonable and impossible." I stood up, refusing to look at my sister, trembling with rage and shooting venomous glances from her bed, or at my spineless brother-in-law who shirked all responsibility. "How dare they, sister, focus on recovering. As your sister, I'll visit when I should. As for Tyler and Chloe," I paused, my gaze sweeping over Arthur, "they're your children. It's your responsibility as their father to decide their future. You could remarry, or raise them yourself through the hardships, but you should never scheme to push them onto your sister-in-law. It's inappropriate and doesn't solve the real problem." With that, I turned and walked away, ignoring the sobs and mutters behind me. Pushing open the ward door, the smell of disinfectant grew stronger in the corridor. Sunlight streamed in diagonally from the window at the far end, casting long shadows on the floor. Step by step, I walked over those patches of light, my footsteps gradually lightening from their initial heaviness. I knew this was only the beginning. Turning down my sister was like poking a hornet's nest. A tidal wave of gossip and moral judgment from parents, relatives, even neighbors, would come crashing down on me. They wouldn't understand my cold-heartedness or selfishness. All they'd see was a dying sister's plea being heartlessly denied, and two poor children losing their last hope. Blind, hurt following sympathy and self-righteous accusations from a moral high ground have always been the most effective weapons. In my past life, I was completely overwhelmed by these weapons, left with no means to fight back, and ultimately forced to yield. But this time, I took a deep breath, and even though the air was filled with the distinct smell of a hospital, it carried a long-lost sense of freedom. This time, I will never bow my head again. My son, Noah, is still waiting for me at home. This time, my first priority is to protect him and salvage my marriage, which I nearly lost due to a moment of poor judgment. As I stepped out of the hospital, the warm sunlight washed over me, dispelling some of the chill I'd carried from the ward. I looked up at the clear blue sky, and only one thought stood out with absolute clarity in my mind. I'm home, back to my own home, where Thorn and Noah are. As I pushed the door open, a familiar scent washed over me, a mix of faint cooking oil and laundry detergent. That smell hit me right in the heart, and my eyes welled up instantly. For years, I've been caught up in that so-called new home, worrying about Tyler and Chloe's daily needs and fretting over their grades, rarely stopping to remember what our little nest, mine, Thorn's, and Noah's, even smelled like. In the living room, Thorn sat on the couch with a newspaper in hand, but his gaze was distant, a deep furrow etched between his brows. 5-year-old Noah sat on the floor, quietly playing with a few worn wooden toy cars, unusually calm for a boy his age. At the sound of the door opening, they both looked up at once. Thorn's gaze held a complex scrutiny, with a lingering trace of unresolved anger. In Noah's large eyes, a flicker of light briefly appeared before fading away. He lowered his head and continued playing with his toy car, his small back radiating an indescribable sense of grievance and detachment. Yes, this was the moment, since my sister fell ill, I've been constantly running to the hospital, which naturally meant less attention given to household matters. Thorn had been quietly complaining about this for a while, feeling that I was putting my family before our own by prioritizing my sister's needs over our household. Just yesterday, we had a huge argument because I went to the hospital to care for my sister and miss Noah's parent-child event at kindergarten. At the time, my mind was completely occupied with my sister's condition and those poor nephews of mine. I thought Thorn was being unreasonable and didn't understand my situation, so I blurted out some harsh words. Looking back now, it wasn't just an argument, it was the beginning of a rift I created between them, a crack I drove right through the bond between father and son. In my past life, that crack between us widened into an unbridgeable chasm when I later filed for divorce, abandoned Noah, and married Arthur. Chapter 2. So you decided to come back. Thorn set down the newspaper, his voice brittle with sarcasm. I was starting to think you'd moved into the hospital and changed your last name while you were at it. Had this been my past life, hearing those words would have made me argue with him in hurt and anger, convinced he was cold-hearted and selfish, completely blind to the value of family bonds. But now, seeing the faint weariness and concern in his eyes, And my son's noticeably thinner little face. I was overwhelmed with nothing but regret and heartache. Instead of arguing back like I usually would, I changed my shoes, walked over to Noah, crouched down, and gently stroked his hair. Noah stiffened for a moment. He didn't pull away, but he didn't throw himself into my arms like he used to either. Noah, my voice was a little hoarse. Mom's home. The little guy kept his head down, let out a quiet, sullen and clutched his toy car tightly in his small hand. Here we go again. Thorne seemed taken aback, probably because the argument he'd expected never came. His tone softened slightly, but the edge remained. How's your sister? Did she drag you into another sob story, begging you to save her 2 kids no matter what? His words dripped with presumptuous certainty and resentment. Of course, even Thorne could see right through my sister's schemes. Yet in my past life, I'd been completely blinded by so-called family bonds and responsibility. Plunging headlong into her traps, I stood up, met Thorne's gaze, took a deep breath, and resolved to stop hiding and avoiding the truth. Yes, I nodded, continuing under his suddenly sharpened gaze. My sister is gravely ill. She's worried that after she's gone, Arthur won't be able to care for the children properly, and that a stepmother might mistreat Tyler and Chloe. Thorne snorted coldly, remaining silent. But his expression clearly said, just as I expected, today. I paused, then clearly articulated the rest. She took my hand and begged me to get a divorce, then marry Arthur and help raise her 2 children until they come of age. What? Thorne shot up from the couch, his face turning ashen, his fists clenched instantly, veins bulging on his forehead. Has she lost her mind? Have you lost yours? How could you even consider such nonsense, Syra? I'm telling you, don't even think about it. His reaction was exactly what I expected, even more intense than in our past life. In our previous life, I had been gradually pushed to that point under various pressures after my sister's death, half reluctantly giving in, but this time, I laid out the most absurd and hurtful request directly before him. Although Noah didn't fully understand what was happening, he was frightened by his father's sudden outburst. He dropped his toy car and timidly ran to Thorne's side, clinging tightly to his leg, his wide eyes full of fear as he looked at me. That look cut through my heart like a knife. I didn't agree, I said to Thorne, my voice quiet but unwavering. Thorne's roar cut off abruptly. He stood frozen, his face a comical mix of lingering anger and sheer astonishment. What did you say? I said I didn't agree, I repeated, stepping closer to meet his gaze directly. I turned my sister down and made things clear to her husband. Raising Tyler and Chloe is Arthur's responsibility as their father, not mine. I'm Noah's mother. My place is here, with this family. The moment I finished speaking, a dead silence fell over the living room. Only Noah's faint sobs and his small hands clutching Thorne's leg could be heard. The anger on Thorne's face gradually faded, replaced by utter confusion and disbelief. He studied me as if seeing me for the very first time. It took him a long moment before he seemed to find his voice again, thick with disbelief. Are you serious? You really said that to your sister? No wonder he didn't believe it. In my past life, I had virtually no principles when it came to my sister and family ties. To spare my sister's feelings, I'd made Thorne and Noah swallow their pride countless times. In his eyes, I've probably long become that sister-obsessed wife who prioritizes her birth family over our own, really. I met his gaze without flinching. Thorne, I was wrong before. I neglected you both while being consumed with my sister's affairs, but from now on, that stops. I lowered my head, watching our son clinging tightly to his father, and my voice softened with sincerity. This is our home. You're my husband. Noah is our son. You're the ones I should cherish most. I won't do anything to hurt this family or either of you ever again. As I spoke, I bent down and reached out to hold Noah. The little one hesitated, glancing at his dad, then at me, before finally loosening his grip on Thorne's leg. Tentatively, almost cautiously, he let me pick him up, as his small, warm body settled into my arms, carrying the faint scent of milk. The tears I'd been holding back for so long finally spilled over, landing on his tiny shoulder. Noah reached out with his little hand, clumsily wiping my face, and whispered, "Mommy, don't cry." That single word, "Mommy," shattered my composure completely, and I held him tight against me. Thorne stood by, watching us mother and child, the tension in his expression finally melting away completely. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but ended up just sighing, walking over and wrapping his arms around both of us. Though his embrace was still somewhat stiff, this long-awaited, slightly awkward hug gave me an unprecedented sense of security. I knew rebuilding trust would take time. I've broken their hearts, and no amount of promises can easily mend that, but at least I've taken the first step toward coming back. This family, a fragile boat tossed by storms, has finally been steered slightly back on course by my clumsy hands. I gave him a look and remained silent, yet I know full well that the turmoil at the hospital won't subside just because I refused. It's brewing, and soon it will sweep over us in another form. The next 2 days were eerily calm. I deliberately cut back on hospital visits, only calling daily for updates under the pretext of caring for Noah and managing household matters. Arthur usually answered, his voice sounding more weary and distressed, always sighing heavily as he reported Olivia's unstable condition and poor mood, but never mentioning that day's request again. I know this isn't the end, but the calm before the storm. I've shifted my focus entirely to home life. I cook Thorn and Noah's favorite dishes. Patiently join Noah in games I once found childish, and keep our home spotless with gleaming windows. The Thorn still doesn't say much. The gloom has lifted from his face. In the evenings, he even initiates conversations about work. This simple, mundane happiness, like gentle water, slowly seeps into the parched and cracked fields of my heart from a past life. I almost greedily wish that life could just go on like this forever. But what was meant to come, eventually did. On the third afternoon, just after I had picked up Noah from kindergarten and was preparing dinner in the kitchen, there was a knock at the door. It wasn't the usual knock, but rather an impatient, urgent banging. My heart sank. I wiped my hands and went to answer the door. Standing outside was my mother. She wore a faded navy blue coat, her hair slightly disheveled. Her face showed the weariness of a long journey, but more than that, it was filled with barely contained anger. Her eyes were like two owls, boring straight into my face. "Mom, what brings you here? You didn't even give me a heads up." I stepped aside to let her in, ignoring my question. My mother strode straight into the living room, her sharp gaze sweeping across the room. Noah timidly called out "Grandma," and she only responded with a non-committal hum from her nose. "Syra," she turned to face me, getting straight to the point, her voice cold and hard. "Your sister is lying in the hospital, on her last breath. And all she can think about are the two little ones. She's asking you for such a small favor. How can you be so heartless and flat-out refuse? Are you even human? Do you have any conscience at all?" The rapid-fire barrage of questions, the exact same tone and expression as in my past life, as if I hadn't just refused an utterly absurd request, but had instead snuffed out the children's chance at life. So Olivia or Arthur did end up complaining to her after all. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, please sit down and have some water. It's not what you think, not what I think." My mother's voice shot up sharply, her finger nearly jabbing my nose. "Then what is it? Olivia is your own sister. She's dying. Her two children are so young. A child without a mother is like a blade of grass without roots. You're their aunt. What's wrong with lending a hand? What's wrong with marrying him? Do you think we're asking you to jump into a fire? This is about helping your sister, about doing a good deed." There you go again with the same old story, good karma. And what exactly did all the good deeds from my past life get me? "Mom, I'm willing to lend a hand, but there are limits to how far I can stretch it." I stood my ground, watching her face flush with emotion. "I can check in on the kids occasionally, help out where I'm able, but asking me to divorce my husband, abandon Thorn and Noah, marry my brother-in-law, and take on full responsibility for raising two children, that goes way beyond helping out. It's just not reasonable, not reasonable." "How is it not reasonable?" My mother reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Thorn is perfectly capable, and Noah still has his grandmother. But what about Tyler and Chloe? What do they have? What good is that useless Arthur going to be? Do you think any stepmother would treat them right?" How could Olivia rest peacefully knowing this? She beat her chest and stamped her feet, tears springing to her eyes on cue. "What did I do to deserve this? To raise such a cold-hearted daughter? You'd stand by and watch your own nephew leap into the fire without lifting a finger to help. Is your heart made of stone?" Her wailing was loud and piercing. Noah was terrified, hiding by the kitchen door, his little face pale, too scared to come closer. I watched my mother's performance, my heart turning to ice. In my past life, I was completely taken in by her dramatic sobbing and accusations of me being heartless and ungrateful, to the point where I actually started to believe I had committed some unforgivable sin, and ultimately, I gave in. But now, I see with perfect clarity the utterly selfish logic hidden beneath this facade of selfless maternal love and sisterly devotion, all for the sake of fulfilling one daughter's wish and securing the future of two grandchildren. She feels completely justified in demanding that her other daughter sacrifice her entire life. "Mom," I cut through her tearful lament, my voice quiet but crystal clear, "I understand that you care deeply for my sister and for Tyler and Chloe, but have you ever stopped to care about me? Have you ever truly cared about Noah?" I pointed at my son trembling by the kitchen door. "If I actually did what my sister asked, divorced Thorn, abandoned Noah, and became a mother to someone else's children, have you considered what would happen to Noah? He's so young, he'd lose his mother. How could you ask a mother to do that? What would Thorn think? Would our family even survive?" My mother's sobs hitched, her eyes flickering for a moment before being overtaken by stronger emotion. Noah, at least Noah has his father and grandmother, but what about Tyler and Chloe? They've lost everything. Can't you see the bigger picture? Do you have to be so calculating? The bigger picture, sacrificing me and my son to give my dying sister peace of mind, that's the bigger picture. As I looked at her, I suddenly felt utterly exhausted, yet completely clear-headed. Mom, I've made myself perfectly clear. I absolutely will not agree to this demand, I stated firmly. I'll visit and help my sister as any sister should, but that's the extent of it. As for Tyler and Chloe's future, that's Arthur's responsibility. If you're so concerned, you can step in to assist more, or make sure Arthur fulfills his duties as a father, instead of pinning your hopes on your heartless sister-in-law. My mother had probably never seen me so resolute and unyielding. She pointed a trembling finger at me, her lips quivering as she stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. Before finally stamping her foot in frustration, Fine, Syra, you're something else, turning your back on your own family. Go on, live your life in your little bubble. Let's see if you can face your sister, or me, ever again. With that, she shot me a furious glare, cast a sharp look at Noah cowering in the corner, then turned and slammed the door behind her. A deafening crash reverberated through the room, making the walls shudder. The room fell into an abrupt silence. Broken only by Noah's stifled, whimpering sobs, I stood frozen in place, a chilling numbness spreading through my body, leaving my hands and feet ice-cold. I knew this was only the beginning. My mother wouldn't let this go. She'd rally my father, other relatives, even the neighbors, using the weight of public opinion to force me into submission. The herd mentality of sympathy and self-righteous moral judgment would soon descend upon me like an invisible net. I walked over, knelt down, and held my trembling son tightly in my arms. Chapter 3, Don't be scared, Noah, Mommy's here, I whispered, comforting both him and myself. This time, no matter who comes or what they say, I will not back down. This is my battlefield. All I need to protect is this home and my son. My mother slammed the door so hard on her way out, there's no way the neighbors didn't hear it. Sure enough, the next morning when I dropped Noah off at kindergarten, I could sense something was off. Our neighbor Barbara, who usually greets me with a smile, avoided eye contact, gave a quick nod, and hurried away when she saw me. The shopkeeper downstairs gave me a searching look, as if holding back words. When I bought soy sauce, I knew all too well that my mother's dramatic accusations from yesterday were starting to take effect. This silent isolation and scrutiny is worse than an outright argument. It's like fine needles, everywhere, pricking at you until you can't sit still. Thorne came back from work in the evening, and he didn't look too good either. During the meal, he picked at his food for a few bites and seemed to hesitate for a long time before putting down his chopsticks. He looked at me and said, "Today, Sister Ruth from the factory union had a talk with me." My heart sank. Sister Ruth was known throughout the factory for her warm-hearted nature, but she also loved meddling in others' affairs. Gossip and rumors spread like wildfire through her. What did she say? I tried to keep my voice calm. Thorne sighed, his brow furrowing again. She didn't say it outright, just hinted around asking if our family was having difficulties, that your sister is seriously ill. We have young children at home. It's not easy. She also said neighbors should be understanding of each other, and if there's any way to help out, we should lend a hand so people won't talk behind our backs. He paused, looked up at me with a complicated expression, and said, "She also mentioned, I heard there's some kind of request from your sister's side that's putting you in a difficult position. Syra, what's really going on? Was that why Mom came to see you yesterday?" It seems the rumor has evolved. The narrative shifted from Syra heartlessly rejected her dying sister to there's some unspoken family request that Syra is struggling with. This vague framing actually fuels more speculation, shifting the court of public opinion onto our small family. People tend to automatically sympathize with the underdog in the dying, without questioning whether the request itself is reasonable. My heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle. I set down my bowl and chopsticks, and told Thorne exactly what my sister had asked for at the hospital that day, and how I had refused my mother yesterday, plainly and honestly, without embellishment. Thorne's face darkened completely, his fists clenched tightly. Absurd, utterly ridiculous. His voice trembled with anger. How dare they think that way? What do they take us for? He sprang to his feet and paced back and forth across the living room like a cornered beast. No wonder Sister Ruth was speaking with such insinuations. So that's what this is about. They're trying to drown us in gossip and force you to comply. Thorne, I called out to him, looking into his eyes reddened with fury. I can't control what others say or think, but every word I told you yesterday was true. And it's my final decision. I won't agree to it. Thorne came to a halt, his chest still heaving as he looked at me. The anger in his eyes gradually gave way to a heavy sense of resignation. "I knew you wouldn't agree," he said, his voice dropping. "But Syra, you know how vicious gossip can be. Your mother won't let this go. If rumors start spreading, I can handle the awkwardness at the factory. We see each other all the time anyway. It's mainly Noah. He's so young, and I'm afraid." He didn't finish the sentence, but we both understood. Children are the most vulnerable. The whispers and subtle exclusion could really hurt him. Just then, the phone rang sharply, cutting through the tension. Thorn and I exchanged a look, both sensing a bad feeling in our gut. I walked over and picked up the phone. "Hello, Syra. It's me, your uncle." The gruff voice on the other end carried the authoritative tone unique to elders. "Uncle," I replied. "Syra, your mother told me about your sister." Uncle began bluntly, his tone laced with disapproval. "Don't take this the wrong way, but what you did wasn't right. Your sister's in that condition, and those 2 children are pitiful. As their aunt, you should help however you can. How could you outright refuse? You've upset your mother so much. Our family has never raised anyone so heartless." Even Uncle, who lives out in the countryside and we rarely see, had been roped into this. It seemed my mother had mobilized every possible ally. "Uncle," I explained patiently, "it's not what you think. I'm willing to help, but I have my own family and child to consider. I can't just—" "Why can't you?" Uncle cut me off impatiently. "Thorn is a reasonable man. Noah has his own family too. Just think of it as doing a good deed for your sister. Listen to me, stop being so stubborn, go to the hospital, apologize to your sister and your mother, and agree to help. That's how family should act, the way things should be." I could no longer hold back the anger boiling inside me. "Uncle, tell me, is the way a family should be forcing one daughter to divorce and abandon her own child just to fix the mess in another daughter's family? Is that what you call reasonable?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. He clearly hadn't expected me to talk back so bluntly. Then Uncle's voice turned sharp with anger. "Syra, how dare you speak to your elder like that? I only want what's best for you sisters and this family. Don't you dare be ungrateful. What's best for me?" I let out a cold laugh. "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't be pushing me into a living hell. Uncle, if you truly have any love for your niece, go talk to my brother-in-law, tell him to step up and take responsibility for his own children like a real man, instead of expecting his sister-in-law to sacrifice her entire life. I've said all I need to say. This matter is not up for discussion." I hung up before my uncle's furious roar could come through the receiver. The click of the handset settling back into the cradle echoed sharply in the sudden silence of the living room. Turning around, I found Thorn standing behind me. The anger and frustration in his eyes had vanished, replaced by a peculiar gleam. He stepped closer, reached out, and gave my shoulder a firm squeeze. "You're right." His voice was low, yet carried a firm strength. "Syra, you did the right thing. Before, I was too cautious. From now on, no matter who calls or what anyone says, we'll face it together." He glanced toward the bedroom. Noah was already asleep. "This home, we'll protect it together." Gazing into Thorn's resolute eyes and feeling the warmth from his hand, my heart, adrift through 2 lifetimes, cold and hopeless, finally found a shore to cling to. The storm outside may rage fiercer, but at least I'm no longer weathering it alone. My uncle's call was like a starting pistol, kicking off days of relentless phone calls. My aunt, my younger aunt, even distant relatives I rarely spoke to, it was as if they'd all coordinated to call me in shifts. Their scripts were nearly identical. "Your sister's struggling. The child is innocent. Family should support each other. Don't be so selfish. You'll break your parents' hearts." At first I tried to explain myself, but soon realized it was utterly pointless. They couldn't care less about the truth or my situation. They were completely absorbed in their self-righteous morality play, reveling in the superiority of playing the moral arbiters from their high ground. Eventually, I just stopped answering. The incessant ringing grated on my nerves, but I just let it go. When Thorn came home from work and saw the missed call log, he just silently patted my back. But this silent resistance seemed to anger them even more. On Saturday morning, just as Thorn and I were about to take Noah to the park, the door was knocked on again. This time, the knocking was steady and persistent. Carrying an air of inevitability, Thorn walked over to open the door, and standing outside was my father. Before retiring, my father was a middle school teacher. He was a man of few words, often fading into the background at home, yet stubborn by nature and deeply concerned with face and family reputation. He wore a faded Sun Yat-sen suit, his expression somber, his eyes filled with profound disappointment and weariness. "Dad," Thorn said, stepping aside to let him in. Noah softly called out Grandpa. My father patted his head without a word, his gaze immediately shifting to me. "Syra," he began, his voice hoarse and heavy, "after your mother went back, she cried for days and couldn't eat. When your uncles and aunts called me, the things they said, I can hardly hold my head up anymore." I poured him a glass of water and set it on the coffee table. "Dad, please have a seat." He remained standing, rooted like a stone statue suppressing its anger. I know your sister's request is a bit unreasonable. I was taken aback by his words, but then he shifted his tone, saying, Syra, in this life, we can't just think of ourselves. Your sister is fading fast, as her family. Even if we can't make it perfect, shouldn't we at least try to fulfill her last wish? Let her pass in peace. He then adopted that grave, lecturing tone again. Yes, you've been wronged. But think of your sister, think of those motherless children. Can't you set your grievances aside for a moment? Our family has always been harmonious and supportive. We can't let it become so cold-hearted because of you. Using the bigger picture, family reputation, and respect for the deceased to emotionally blackmail the living. Dad, I took a deep breath, cutting off his impending lecture. I'm not being cold-hearted. I just know where to draw the line between what I can and cannot help with. I looked into his clouded yet stubborn eyes. I've never complained about taking care of my sister at the hospital, contributing both money and effort. If Arthur genuinely struggles after my sister's gone, I'll help his family should, but asking me to divorce, to become Arthur's wife and stepmother to Tyler and Chloe, that crosses the line from helping to destroying my own life, and ruining Thorne and Noah's lives too. My voice rose involuntarily. You're only thinking about putting my sister's mind at ease and protecting the family's reputation, but have you considered what would happen to Thorne, to Noah? Aren't they your family too? Are their lives just disposable? My father's face darkened. He'd probably never been confronted so bluntly by me before. What kind of nonsense is this? Thorne is an adult, and there's Noah and his grandparents. How can you call this a sacrifice? He was growing flustered with anger. Do you have to be so stubborn? Do you really want to push everyone away until you're left with nothing? Push everyone away? I looked at him, the last flicker of hope in my heart extinguished. If so-called family means disregarding my well-being and forcing me into a living hell, then I'd rather turn my back on that kind of family. My father was so furious his hands trembled, pointing at me but unable to form another word. Thorne, who had been silent all this time, stepped forward and positioned himself in front of me. He looked at my father, his tone respectful but his stance unyielding. Dad, on this matter, Syra and I are in complete agreement. This family of ours cannot fall apart. No one, no matter who, will change that. My father looked at Thorne, then at me, his eyes filled with disbelief and a sense of offended anger. He seemed to finally realize that this time Thorne and I were determined to stand together against the pressure from the entire family. His lips trembled, but in the end, he said nothing. He just gave me a deep, profoundly disappointed look, as if I had done something scandalous, then abruptly turned, pulled the door open, and left. This time, he didn't slam the door, but the heavy sound of it closing was louder than ever, as if a door had also shut inside my heart. I knew then that a deep divide had been drawn between me and my family, or rather, between me and those relatives who could not, and would not, understand me. Noah was frightened by the successive conflicts and clung tightly to my leg. I bent down to pick him up, and the little one buried his face in the crook of my neck, whispering, Mom, do Grandma and Grandpa not like us anymore? My heart felt like it was being wrenched. No, Noah. I kissed his hair, my voice trembling slightly. Grandma and Grandpa, they just haven't figured things out yet, but Mom and Dad love you. We love you so very much. Our family will always be together. Thorne also reached out and wrapped his arms around both of us. The sunlight outside was just right, streaming through the window and filling the room with warmth, yet the three of us stood as if on an isolated island, surrounded by turbulent undercurrents known as family bonds and public opinion. But this time, we leaned on each other and stood firm. After Father left, the house fell into complete silence. The phone stopped ringing, and uninvited knocks at the door fell silent. A near stagnant quiet enveloped the small home. I knew this wasn't the storm passing, it was them cutting me loose, casting me out of that so-called big family. Thorne seemed busier, coming home later than before. I could tell he must have been under a lot of pressure at the factory too. That kind of concern from Sister Ruth definitely wasn't a one-time thing, but he never mentioned any of it when he came home. He just quietly helped with the housework, played with Noah, and held our family together through his actions. Noah has become a bit clingy lately. Probably all the recent arguments and visits from strangers have made him feel insecure. I tried to soothe him with more companionship, taking him to the nearby playground, reading him picture books, watching his little brow occasionally furrow even in sleep. My heart ached with an indescribable sorrow. One evening a few days later, the phone rang out sharply again. Thorne and I exchanged a glance, both hesitating. In the end, I walked over and picked it up. Hello. My voice held a wariness I hadn't even realized was there. After a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line, Arthur's voice came through, hoarse, weary, and choked with tears. Syra, Olivia, she passed away this afternoon. Even though I had seen it coming, hearing the news firsthand still felt like a heavy blow to the chest. The sister I grew up with, the one who would snatch candy from me but also stand up for me when I was bullied, was truly gone. All the resentment from our past life and the finality of this one, in that moment, dissolved into a complex, hollow sorrow. When did it happen? My voice was parched. Around 3 in the afternoon. Arthur sniffled on the other end. He was restless when he passed, kept murmuring about Tyler, Chloe, and you. He deliberately emphasized those last 3 words. Like a silent accusation, I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and forced down the surging emotions. Did my sister resent me until her dying day? Maybe, but that doesn't matter anymore. What about the funeral arrangements? I changed the subject, keeping my tone as professional as possible. We'll hold it in our hometown. The burial is in 3 days, Arthur sobbed. Syra, I know this is difficult for you, but the children are terrified, crying non-stop. Could you please come see them, if only for Olivia's sake? His plea sounded pitiful and desperate, laden with the grief of losing his wife and the helplessness of a father. In a past life, my heart would have been torn apart, and I would have rushed to his side without a second thought. But now, I know all too well that behind the seemingly vulnerable request may lie a hidden trap. The moment I take this step, countless expectations will inevitably follow. Helping with the funeral arrangements is only natural, comforting the children is only natural, and in everyone's eyes, even taking on the responsibility of raising the children has become the obvious thing to do. Brother-in-law, I said clearly, I'm deeply saddened by my sister's passing. As her sister, I will be there with Thorn on the day of the funeral to see her off. As for Tyler and Chloe, I paused, sensing the person on the other end of the line holding their breath. They are your children, right now. What they need most is their father's presence and comfort. I trust you can handle this. If you need any help, you can speak to the other relatives, or we can discuss how we might assist after the funeral is over. I didn't give a definitive answer, leaving some room for interpretation, but I made my boundaries perfectly clear. I'm family, an aunt, not someone to entrust a child to, and certainly not a replacement. Arthur fell silent on the other end of the line. After a long pause, a heavy sigh filled with disappointment and resentment came through. I understand. Well, see then. After hanging up, I leaned against the wall, feeling completely drained. Thorn came over, placed a hand on my shoulder, and asked quietly, "What's wrong?" "My sister, she's gone," I said. "The funeral is the day after tomorrow." Thorn was silent for a moment, then tightened his grip on my shoulder. "I'll go with you." Chapter 4. I nodded. This was a journey I had to make, not just to say goodbye to my sister, but to make my stance clear to everyone one last time. On the day of the funeral, the weather was gloomy, with a fine drizzle falling. Dressed in muted colors, Thorn and I returned to the familiar yet estranged courtyard of my ancestral home with Noah in tow. A funeral canopy stood in the courtyard, with people coming and going amidst a palpable air of mourning. Our arrival instantly drew numerous gazes. Those stares were complex and hard to decipher. Some held sympathy, others curiosity, but most carried a chilling scrutiny and veiled accusation. My mother, dressed in mourning attire, sat beside the funeral hall, supported by 2 relatives, weeping so intensely she nearly fainted. When she saw me, her sobs faltered for a moment before she turned her head away, as if one more glance in my direction would soil her eyes. My father, as the chief mourner, was busy attending to arrangements. When he noticed us, he gave a blank nod, his gaze as distant as if we were strangers. Arthur was clad in heavy mourning clothes, his eyes swollen and red, his face haggard. He was guiding 6-year-old Tyler and 4-year-old Chloe, both children drowning in ill-fitting funeral garments, their small faces etched with fear and confusion, a sight that wrenched the heart. Arthur's lips parted when he saw me, but before he could speak, a shrill voice cut in from the side. "Well, if it isn't Syra, thought you'd forgotten all about us poor relatives after climbing the social ladder." It was my second aunt, eyeing me sideways with undisguised sarcasm in her tone. Several relatives nearby began whispering among themselves, their stares pricking me like needles. "Exactly. Couldn't even bother to see your own sister one last time. How heartless." I heard she even abandoned her own mother. What a waste of all those years raising her. Look how pitiful those 2 children are. How could their aunt be so heartless? Thorn's face darkened as he stepped forward, about to say something. I grabbed his arm, ignoring the hushed whispers. I walked straight to the funeral altar and bowed 3 times solemnly before my sister's portrait. I thought to myself, rest in peace, sis, your journey has ended. But mine continues on. After lighting the incense, I approached Arthur and pulled out a prepared white envelope from my pocket containing a modest yet meaningful sum of money. "Please accept my condolences. This is just a small token. Please get the children whatever they need," I said, handing him the envelope. Arthur stared at the envelope, hesitating to take it. His eyes grew redder, his voice choked with emotion. "Syra, the money, it's not important. What matters are the children." He's trying to play the emotional card again. Then Tyler, the 6-year-old boy standing beside him whose features already bore a resemblance to his sister's, suddenly looked up and shouted in a tearful voice tinged with resentment beyond his years, "I don't want your money, you're a horrible aunt, you never cared about us, you're the one who made Mom so sick she died," out of the mouths of babes. Yet his words struck my heart like a poison-tipped dagger. The funeral hall fell silent in an instant, and all eyes, filled with sympathy, condemnation, or sheer schadenfreude, were fixed on me. I looked into Tyler's eyes, burning with hatred, at Arthur's expression of tacit approval, even a hint of grim satisfaction, and at the surrounding relatives with their I knew it stares. Slowly, I withdrew the hand holding the envelope, straightened my back, and calmly let my gaze sweep past Tyler before settling on Arthur's face. "Brother-in-law," my voice cut clearly through the quiet of the funeral hall. "The child is still young and doesn't know any better. Some things shouldn't be said carelessly, but as his father, you should teach him right from wrong. Everyone is grieving over my sister's illness and passing, but that responsibility shouldn't be placed on any outsider." I paused for a moment, then placed the envelope on the nearby table. "I'm leaving the money here. Whether you use it or not is up to you. Thorn and I have other matters to attend to, so we'll be going now." Without another glance at anyone, I took Thorn's hand, scooped up the startled Noah, and turned away. Step by deliberate step, I walked out of that suffocating place under the weight of dead silence and countless staring eyes. The drizzle fell on my face, cold and sharp, but I knew, from this day forward, I had truly and completely severed the chains of my past. The path beneath my feet was muddy, yet it was the only road leading to my own future. The turmoil at the funeral, like the mud on this rainy day, splattered all over me. Though I left promptly, that sticky, damp chill seemed to linger. Back in my small city home, I closed the door, shutting out those gazes of pity and blame, and only then did I allow myself to relax a little, holding the warm, milk-scented Noah in my arms and feeling Thorn's silent yet steadfast presence beside me. My heart, which had been shattered into a million pieces at the funeral, slowly began to thaw. "Mommy, why did that little boy say you're a bad person?" Noah looked up at me, his clear eyes filled with confusion and a hint of fear. I kissed his forehead and explained in terms he could understand, because his mommy went to a place far away, and he's very sad, so he said something out of anger, just like when you get upset sometimes and say mommy is mean. "It's not really true, is it?" Noah nodded with partial understanding and rested his little head on my shoulder. Thorn sighed and put his arm around my shoulder. "That must have been tough for you, in that kind of situation. Arthur really can't even teach his own child properly." I shook my head without saying a word. "Can't teach him properly." Perhaps that's exactly the kind of perception Arthur, and even my late sister, subconsciously wanted the child to form. It was I, their heartless aunt, who brought this misfortune upon them. This way, they could forever claim the moral high ground as victims, while I would be eternally burdened with guilt. But in this lifetime, I refused to carry that burden any longer. In the days that followed, I made a conscious effort to avoid any news from my hometown and blocked out all potential distractions. I began pouring all my energy into our little family. Thorn seemed to have made up his mind too, no longer occasionally mentioning family obligations like he used to. He worked harder than ever, coming home to help me cook and spend time with our child. On weekends, the three of us would go to the park, take walks by the river, or stay home building blocks and reading picture books with Noah. Our days flowed like a gentle stream, calm and steady. There were no earth-shattering joys, but we found a quiet, mundane sense of security that felt both familiar and newly precious. Noah's smiles have become more frequent, and he's gradually regained his former liveliness. Watching him run and play without a care in the world, I feel every struggle and rupture was worth it. Occasionally in the still of night, I still think of my sister, of our childhood scuffles over candy, and a faint wistfulness brushes my heart, but that's all there is to it. Everyone has their own path. Hers had reached its end, while mine had just begun to emerge from the fog, its direction now clear. About half a month later, on a weekend afternoon, I was taking Noah to play on the slide in the small garden downstairs when I ran into Aunt Barbara, who had also brought her grandchild down to play. She was the neighbor who used to avoid me whenever she saw me. When she spotted me, she seemed to hesitate for a moment, but ultimately walked over, holding her granddaughter's hand. "Hey Syra," taking Noah out to play, she greeted with a slightly strained smile. "Aunt Barbara." I nodded, returning a faint smile. She tickled Noah's chin before casually mentioning, "I visited my hometown last week, and heard things have been quite lively over at your brother-in-law's place." Without looking up from watching Noah slide down the playground slope, I murmured, "Oh, is that so?" When Aunt Barbara saw I wasn't taking the bait, she seemed a bit embarrassed but couldn't resist continuing, "Exactly. I heard after your sister passed away, your mother felt so sorry for her two grandsons that she wanted to take them in to raise them, but your brother-in-law absolutely refused, saying the children shouldn't leave their home. This caused quite a bit of tension between the two sides. That didn't come as a surprise. My mother wants control, while Arthur might genuinely not want to part with the children. Or perhaps he doesn't want to lose his last bargaining chip. Conflict was inevitable. Aunt Barbara lowered her voice, adopting a conspiratorial tone, and what's more, I've heard several matchmakers have approached your brother-in-law. They're all eyeing your family's situation, probably thinking that with your sister gone and two children in tow, he'd be easier to manipulate, but it seems your brother-in-law hasn't agreed to any of them. Who knows what he's really thinking? A matchmaker? I raised an eyebrow slightly. This is moving faster than in my previous life, in my past life. After I selflessly sacrificed myself by marrying into that family, no one entertained that idea anymore. In this lifetime, I've stepped back. Arthur, now a widower with two young children, instantly became a suitable target in certain people's eyes. Why didn't he agree? Is he still holding out hope that I'll change my mind, or is he just waiting for the highest bidder? I sneered inwardly. Whatever scheme he's plotting has nothing to do with me anymore. We don't really know what goes on in other people's households, I said lightly, standing up and calling to Noah. Noah, it's time to go home for dinner. Aunt Barbara seemed to sense my reluctance to talk further. She gave an awkward smile and left with her granddaughter. On our way home, Noah chattered excitedly about how much fun the slide was, holding his little hand. I felt completely at peace. Let the storms rage outside and others scheme as they may. My world is small, just big enough for this lively little one by my side, and that window glowing with warm light where a hot meal awaits us. The peaceful days turned like pages in a book. Before we knew it, Noah was about to start elementary school. Over the past few years, Thorne and I have deliberately reduced contact with our hometown. At first we'd call during the holidays, but we'd either get my mother's indifferent ahs or Arthur's sighs and complaints. Eventually we just sent gifts out of obligation and stopped going back altogether. I heard Arthur eventually remarried, a woman from a poor family in the neighboring village. They say that woman has a bit of a fiery temper. After she married into the family, she had several arguments with Arthur, and her relationship with my mother was quite strained. Whispers about whether Tyler and Chloe were being mistreated by their stepmother occasionally reached my ears. But I let them go in one ear and out the other. That wasn't my responsibility. I kept telling myself, everyone has their own path to walk, and everyone has their own struggles to bear. Thorne and I poured all our energy into our work and into Noah. Thorne was skilled and diligent at the factory, which earned him a promotion to team leader. Though busier, his income saw a bump. I found some casual work assembling cardboard boxes near the residential area. The flexible hours made it easier to manage things at home. We weren't living in luxury, but we had all the basics covered and could even set aside a little money each month. We enrolled Noah in the best elementary school in the district. On the first day of school, watching our little one walk through the school gates with a brand new backpack, both nervous and excited, Thorne and I exchanged a smile. In that moment, all the hardships and struggles we'd faced felt completely worthwhile. Noah made us proud. He did well in his studies, had a cheerful personality, and was exactly the kind of student teachers adore. The highlight of our day was always when he came home from school, chattering nonstop about all the fun things that happened. It became our family's greatest source of joy. I thought life would continue like this, simple, content, and fulfilling. It was the autumn when Noah was in 3rd grade. That afternoon, while I was home gluing cardboard boxes, there came a knock at the door. The knock sounded hesitant, unlike our familiar neighbors. I wiped my hands and went to answer the door. Standing outside the door was my mother. I hadn't seen her in years, and she had aged considerably. Her hair was almost completely white, deep wrinkles were etched across her face, and her posture was no longer straight. She wore a faded, dusty old coat and carried a cloth bag so worn its original color was indistinguishable. The sharpness and anger were gone from her eyes, replaced by a heavy weariness, and even a hint of cautious ingratiation. I froze, completely at a loss for how to react. "Syra," she spoke first, her voice dry and raspy. I came to see Noah." I didn't let her in right away, just shifted aside and said, "Come on in." She seemed to relax a little. Quickly stepping inside, she stood awkwardly in the middle of the living room, taking in the home that had become unfamiliar to her. "Have a seat." I poured her a glass of water. She took the glass but didn't drink, her hands tracing the rim as she hesitated for a long moment before murmuring, "Noah must have grown taller by now. How are his grades?" "Yeah, he's doing well," I replied tersely. Chapter 5. Another awkward silence fell between us. I knew she hadn't come just to see her grandson. Her years of silence and indifference had already made her stance perfectly clear, just as I expected, after hesitating for a long while. She finally couldn't hold back and let out a heavy sigh, her eyes reddening. Syra, Mom, I know I was wrong before. I pushed you too hard. I watched her quietly without responding. She wiped her tears and began pouring out her grievances. You have no idea. That woman your brother-in-law married is just awful. She mistreats Tyler and Chloe, hits them, yells at them, and doesn't even feed them properly. And that spineless Arthur doesn't dare say a word. Your father has argued with Arthur about this several times. It's made his blood pressure spike. Your father and I wanted to take the children in, but we're getting old and don't have the energy anymore. And your father's health isn't good either. That woman over there is making a scene, threatening to raise hell if we dare take the children away. We're at our wits' end. She looked up at me with those clouded, tear-filled eyes, in which a familiar glimmer of something called hope had been rekindled. Syra, I know you're struggling too, but Tyler and Chloe are your own flesh and blood. They share the same blood as you. They're just so pitiful now. Their grades are a mess. The teacher calls us in every day. Couldn't you help them for your late sister's sake? You don't have to marry into that family. Just take them in, let them live with you, get them into a good school in the city, please. She looked at me almost pleadingly, as if this was the last and only solution she could think of. As I looked at my mother's aged and submissive face, listening to her tearful plea, my heart only grew colder. Here we go again. Years ago, it was forcing me to marry into that family. Now, it's forcing me to take them in. Different methods. Same goal, to pass the burden of those two children on to me, this time. However, she adopted a more humble stance and played the sympathy card. Do Tyler and Chloe deserve our pity? Perhaps. With a father like Arthur and a stepmother like that, their childhood was bound to be unhappy, but is that reason enough for me to sacrifice my own life to save them? Take them in, easier said than done. Two growing kids, food, clothing, daily expenses, school and education. Which one of these isn't a heavy burden? Just when Thorne and I finally got Noah's life on track and our finances started looking up, we're supposed to take on two more burdens out of nowhere. Is that fair to Thorne? Is it fair to Noah? Besides, given how Tyler lashed out at me with such venom at his sister's funeral, if I took him in, would he even be grateful, or would he just take it for granted and become even more demanding? Chloe is younger, so she might be better off, but growing up in that environment, how innocent could her thoughts really be? In my past life, I gave my all, only to be met with the outcome of not being the real mother. Like a bucket of ice water, it constantly reminds me. I remained silent for too long, and the light in my mother's eyes gradually dimmed, replaced by an anxiety mixed with disappointment and confusion. Syra, are you really this heartless? Will you just stand by and watch them be destroyed? Your sister is in the ground, Mom. I cut her off. My voice quiet but resolute. Please, don't say any more. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the children playing in the yard. With my back to her, I said deliberately, I admit that Tyler and Chloe are pitiful, but the ones responsible for their misery are their father Arthur, their unkind stepmother, and even you and Dad, who indulged them in the past and are now powerless to change things, not me. I turned around and looked at her suddenly pale face. I've said it before, I am Noah's mother. My responsibilities, my energy, my resources, they must first go toward building a good life for my own family and raising my own son. I don't have the capacity, nor the boundless compassion, to take on someone else's life. I never did, and I certainly won't now. Please go, and in the future, unless there's a good reason, there's no need for you to come back. My words, like a final verdict, severed all her hopes. My mother sat there in a daze, like a clay statue that had suddenly lost all its moisture. After what felt like an eternity, she slowly and unsteadily rose to her feet. Without a word, she cast me a hollow, unrecognizing glance before shuffling to the door, pulling it open, and walking out. The moment the door clicked shut, I leaned against the wall and let out a long, weary sigh. There was no triumphant joy in my heart, only a profound and boundless sorrow, for the irretrievable bond between mother and daughter, and for the seemingly inescapable demands and emotional blackmail that come in the name of family. But I know I did nothing wrong. My kindness must be tempered with strength, otherwise, you're only being cruel to yourself. After Mother left that time, her stooped figure resembled a withered weed beaten down by frost. My heart felt heavy and suffocated, yet there was also a sense of relief that the dust had finally settled. That fragile veneer of familial affection, thin as a cicada's wing and barely holding on, was finally torn away completely, revealing the cold, hard reality beneath. Life moved steadily forward. Thorne and I developed an unspoken understanding, working even harder to nurture our little home. Noah graduated from elementary school and got into a good middle school. He was growing like a weed, gradually taking on the appearance of a young man. With his cheerful disposition and consistent academic performance, He became our greatest source of comfort. Thorn gained increasing recognition at the factory and became a key technical expert. My side gig of assembling paper boxes gradually built a steady clientele thanks to my nimble fingers and reliable delivery. The income was modest, but at least it was consistent. We managed to save up some money and gave the house a simple makeover. With the new windows installed, the rooms felt much brighter. From time to time, I'd still catch bits and pieces of news about my hometown through various channels. I heard Arthur and his new wife had another son, stretching their already tight finances even thinner. Tyler dropped out of middle school and stubbornly refused to go back. He spent his days hanging out with a group of idle youths in town, where getting into fights was a regular occurrence, making him a frequent visitor at the local police station. Chloe barely made it through middle school with abysmal grades. Later, she followed some girlfriends from her village to work in factories down south, rarely making it home even once a year. Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel a pang of emotion. After all, I'd watched those children come into this world and once held them in my arms, cooing and playing with them. Had they chosen the right path, I might have offered some help as their aunt when they needed it. But their current situation stems from their father's neglect, a dysfunctional family environment, and the consequences of their own choices. I'm no savior, I can't rescue everyone. I set aside these distractions and focused on the life before me. Noah is about to take his high school entrance exams, the first major milestone in his life. Thorn and I discussed it and signed him up for weekend tutoring sessions. Though it's quite expensive, we consider it money well spent. Watching him burn the midnight oil every day fills me with both heartache and hope. That spring before the exams, on a Sunday afternoon, I went out to buy review materials for Noah. As I reached the mouth of the alley, I spotted a disheveled young man leaning against the wall, his hair dyed a brassy yellow, a cigarette dangling from his lips. His eyes wandered lazily as he scanned the passers-by. I paid him no mind and was about to walk past when he suddenly turned his head, his gaze locking directly onto my face. His face bore a menacing air, with dark circles under his eyes from chronic sleep deprivation. In his features, I could faintly trace a resemblance to my sister Olivia in her younger days, but what dominated was a worn-out numbness and a streetwise shiftiness carved by life's hardships. It was Tyler. He clearly recognized me too, pausing for a moment before a strange, mocking smile twisted his lips. He tossed the cigarette butt to the ground, crushed it under his foot, and sauntered toward me with an unsteady gait. Well, if it isn't my rich city aunt. He stood sloppily before me, a foul mix of cigarette smoke and sweat hitting my nostrils. Haven't seen you in years, dressing more and more like a city slicker, aren't we? I furrowed my brow and instinctively took half a step back, putting distance between us. Tyler, what are you doing here? What? I can't be here, he sneered, giving me a hostile once-over. Heard my dear cousin is taking the high school entrance exam. TSK. Impressive, getting into such a good school, not like me, with no one to care or ask after me, couldn't even scrape together a middle school diploma. His tone was dripping with undisguised jealousy and resentment. You make your own path, I said coldly. No one tied you down to stop you from studying. Bullshit. Tyler, as if struck where it hurt, raised his voice sharply, drawing stares from passers-by. Why couldn't I study? Because no one gave a damn. My dad's a deadbeat, my stepmom's a shrew, and you people, you rich relatives, did any of you lift a finger to help? Huh, especially you. If you hadn't turned your back on us back then, would my sister and I have ended up like this? He's shifting all the blame onto me again. It's just like that 6-year-old's accusation at the funeral, only now it's more blatant and self-righteous. The faint trace of complicated feelings I had upon seeing his wretched state instantly vanished without a trace. Tyler, I looked at him calmly, even with a hint of pity. You're 18 now, aren't you? A grown adult, still blaming all your misfortunes on others. Don't you find that ridiculous? Your father's alive, you've got 2 working hands and feet. The life you want should be earned through your own efforts, not by standing here like a beggar accusing others of refusing to give you handouts. Who the hell are you calling a beggar? Tyler flushed crimson with humiliated rage, stepping forward as if ready to throw a punch. I stood my ground, staring coldly at him. What do you think you're doing? Hitting your own aunt? Go ahead, give it a try. Let's see who the police arrest when they get here, your heartless aunt, or you, assaulting someone in broad daylight. My composure and the warning in my words froze his raised hand midair. He glared at me furiously, chest heaving with rage and resentment, but in the end, he didn't dare lay a hand on me. He spat viciously on the ground, pointed at me, and snarled, Syra, just you wait. You think you're something special because your life's all cushy. We'll see how long that smug attitude lasts. Mark my words. After uttering this feeble threat, He turned away in a huff and quickly disappeared around the corner of the alley. I stood there, watching his aggressive figure vanish into the crowd, feeling not fear but a profound sense of weariness and absurdity. Look, this is the child you were so determined to save and raise. In his mind, your sacrifices are taken for granted, while your refusal is seen as an unforgivable sin. Chapter 6. He never reflects on his own actions, always blaming others for every misfortune. Thankfully, I came to my senses early in this lifetime. I took a deep breath, put this unpleasant episode behind me, and continued toward the bookstore. My Noah was still waiting for his study materials. His future, bright and boundless, is worth every ounce of my devotion to protect. As for those wallowing in resentment and entitlement, let them stew in their own misery. My life and my home have nothing more to do with them. Tyler's unwelcome appearance was like a pebble tossed into a lake, stirring brief ripples before sinking into oblivion. He never bothered me again after that. Maybe my composure and warning that day had an effect, or perhaps he was just venting out of habit without any real persistence to cause trouble. This reinforced my belief that with some people, giving ground and being soft-hearted only invites them to push further. Clear boundaries and a firm stance, on the other hand, are the best form of self-protection. I poured all my energy into helping Noah prepare for his high school entrance exams. The child is very sensible, aware of his parents' struggles, and studies exceptionally hard. When the acceptance letter arrived and Noah got into the city's best high school as he'd hoped, Thorne and I were so moved we nearly burst into tears. That sense of joy and accomplishment is something nothing else can replace. The three of us celebrated together properly. Seeing the confident, hopeful smile on Noah's face, I felt like every struggle, every criticism, every hardship from the past was repaid tenfold in that moment. Life seemed to have finally sailed into a tranquil and warm harbor. Thorne had a stable job, Noah had a bright future ahead, and I managed the household while taking on occasional odd jobs. Our days were fulfilling and satisfying. Those unpleasant memories of my hometown gradually faded, washed away by the tangible happiness right before my eyes. After Noah started boarding at high school, it felt like we suddenly had so much more time at home. Thorne and I would occasionally take walks together, chatting about work, about the kids, or sometimes saying nothing at all, just quietly strolling along, savoring the peace that had settled in after weathering life's storms. I thought this was how my life would quietly wind down to its end, until that seemingly ordinary weekend afternoon. Thorne had gone to the factory for overtime work, and I was home alone tidying up the house. The sunlight was brilliant, streaming through the newly replaced glass window and filling the room with brightness. I was wiping the windowsill when the doorbell rang, thinking Thorne had forgotten his keys. I dried my hands and went to answer the door. Standing outside wasn't Thorne, but someone I never expected to see here, Chloe. She was no longer the timid, scrawny girl from my memories, nor did she resemble the assembly line worker I'd heard she'd become down south. She wore a cheap, brightly colored dress and heavy makeup that seemed too mature for her age. The childhood confusion in her eyes was gone, replaced by a shrewd, calculating look honed by life's hardships, along with a faint, almost imperceptible hint of bitterness. She carried a small, seemingly empty travel bag, and upon seeing me, immediately flashed an exaggerated, ingratiating smile. "Auntie," she called out with excessive warmth, her voice crisp and bright, as if the years of distance and resentment between us had never existed. I froze, holding onto the doorframe without immediately letting her in. "Chloe, how did you find this place? I had to ask around back home and finally managed to track you down," she said, slipping sideways through the door crack before I could even invite her in. Her eyes swept the living room like a searchlight, and she clicked her tongue in admiration. "Auntie, your place is so clean and bright. City life really is better." Her instant familiarity and blatant inspection immediately set off alarm bells in my head. No one visits the inner sanctum without a reason, especially not someone like Chloe showing up like this. "Did you need something?" I asked, keeping my distance and not closing the door as I stood at the entrance. Chloe turned around, her smile fading as she put on a pitiful expression. Her eyes welled up with tears in an instant. "Auntie, I had no other choice but to come to you," she began, wiping her tears, recounting how hard she worked at the factory down south, how the foreman bullied her, and how despite scrimping and saving, she still couldn't put any money aside. "My dad, he only has eyes for my stepmother and his little son. He doesn't care whether I live or die. And you know my brother, he's just drifting through life, barely keeping his own head above water. I had no one to turn to down there. When I got sick, there wasn't a soul to look after me." She spoke between sobs, occasionally stealing glances to gauge my reaction. "So, I cut off her performance," my voice flat and unemotional. "What exactly are you hoping I can do for you?" Chloe seemed taken aback by my directness. After a moment's hesitation, she hurriedly said, "Auntie, I'm not asking for anything like that. I just want to stay with you for a little while. Once I find a job and get settled, I'll leave right away, really." I promise I won't be any trouble. She raised her hand as if taking an oath, but her eyes were shifty and evasive. Stay with me. I took in her outfit, which was completely at odds with the down-and-out relative seeking shelter image, along with that conspicuously light luggage, and sneered inwardly. The same old story. This was no desperate plea for refuge. She'd clearly calculated that our family's fortunes had improved, noticed Noah wasn't home, and saw a chance to freeload, or perhaps she had an ulterior motive. My mind flashed back to my past life, to when I was gravely ill, and the chilling indifference on her and her brother's faces as they said, "She's not our real mother, we have no obligation." Then, the memory surfaced of Tyler's resentful accusations at the mouth of the alley not long ago. Those two siblings are cut from the same cloth, selfish, cold-hearted, and always acting like the world owes them something. Why would I ever invite a wolf into my home? No. I refused without a moment's hesitation. The pitiful look on Chloe's face instantly froze, replaced by shock and anger. "Why not, Aunt? I'm your own niece. I'm in trouble. Can't you just let me stay for a few days? How can you be so heartless?" There you go again with the same old story. It's as if the mere mention of family automatically means I have endless obligations. It's not convenient for me here, I said bluntly, not wanting to waste any more breath. You have a father and a brother. If you're really in trouble, you should go to them, or try other relatives on your mother's side. There's no room for you here. I walked to the door, pulled it open, and made it clear she should leave. "You need to go." Chloe stood there, her face turning pale then flushed with anger. She stared at me with such intense resentment it was practically spilling out, a complete transformation from the pitiful, fawning act she had put on just moments before. "Syra," she shrieked, not even addressing her as aunt anymore, "you're exactly like my brother said, cold-blooded, selfish. You'd turn your back on your own family. Do you think living in the city makes you so great? I'm telling you, people like you will get what's coming to them sooner or later." I looked at her expressionlessly. "Finished. If you're done, please leave." She stomped her foot furiously, snatched up her small travel bag, and walked to the door. Then she turned back and shot me a glare, a look as sharp and venomous as a poisoned dagger. With that final threat, so similar to the ones her brother used to make, she stormed off in a huff. I closed the door, leaned back against it, and let out a slow, steadying breath. A heaviness settled in my chest, not from their curses or insults, but from this seemingly inescapable entanglement and malice born of blood ties. But this time, I didn't waver in the slightest. This home was built by Thorn, Noah, and me, piece by piece, our safe harbor, a sanctuary I won't let anyone destroy, least of all these scheming family members. The sunlight still streamed warmly into the room as I meticulously wiped the spot where Chloe had been standing, as if trying to erase every trace of the unpleasant encounter. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Thorn's office number. There were things I needed to discuss with him beforehand. This battle to protect our little family was far from over. On the phone, I briefly told Thorn about Chloe's visit. Thorn was silent for a few seconds on the other end, then said with conviction, "You did the right thing. That kind of ungrateful person is nothing but trouble once you get involved. I'll come back as soon as I'm done here, and we'll talk more tonight." After hanging up, I felt much more at ease, at least in this house. We're comrades fighting side by side. When Thorn came back that evening, we carefully analyzed the situation. We both felt that Chloe's visit this time was far from just a simple stay. Her flimsy luggage and the way she was dressed made it seem more like a tentative reconnaissance mission. Maybe Tyler went back and said something that made them think we're doing well now, so they came to skim some benefits, or even tried to leech off us long term. "Next time they come, don't even open the door," Thorn said with a dark expression. "We live our lives, and we've had nothing to do with them for a long time." I nodded. That made sense, but it still felt like a thorn stuck in my heart. Being watched like a thief by so-called family, this feeling was truly unpleasant. To avoid unnecessary trouble, we kept an even lower profile, being careful not to share details about our family situation with outsiders. We also reminded Noah not to discuss family matters with people he didn't know well. Life seemed to return to normal. But beneath that calm surface, there was an undercurrent of subtle vigilance. A few months later, shocking news reached me through a roundabout way. Tyler had been arrested for taking part in a gang robbery and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. I was buying groceries at the market when I heard the news. The vendor, a distant relative of our former neighbor, mentioned it casually during our conversation. My hand holding the celery stilled, a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. It was somewhat unexpected, yet somehow not entirely surprising. Given how he roamed the streets with that simmering hostility, it was almost inevitable he'd end up on this path. There wasn't much sympathy, more a sense of sobering reflection and caution. This is what happens with unconditional spoiling followed by a complete lack of proper guidance and discipline. The tragedy was born from Arthur's spineless incompetence, the stepmother's viciousness, and the flaws in their own characters. I paid in silence and headed home with the grocery basket. Chapter 7. I didn't tell Thorn about it, seeing no need to let such sordid business ruin our mood. Tyler chose his own path, and he alone should face the consequences, every now and then. I find myself thinking of my sister Olivia. If she knew, from beyond the grave, that the son she fought so desperately to entrust to a good life had ended up like this, would she regret that selfish request she made back then? Would she finally understand that sometimes, what's called for your own good is nothing but poison coated in sugar? Time continued to flow on, silent and unnoticed, throughout his 3 years of high school. Noah worked tirelessly and ultimately lived up to our expectations by gaining admission to a prestigious key university. On the day he received the acceptance letter, the three of us hugged each other, laughing and crying with overwhelming emotion. In that moment, all the hardships transformed into incomparable pride and happiness. When we dropped Noah off for university registration, Thorn and I stood outside the campus gates, watching him walk into the beautiful school grounds alongside his vibrant classmates, unable to tear ourselves away for the longest time. Our son, he's truly wonderful, Thorn murmured, tears welling in his eyes. I squeezed his hand tightly and nodded vigorously. Yes, he truly is. With our own hands, with our unwavering perseverance, we've created a clear sky for our child, allowing him to fly higher and further. Returning to our empty home, though a bit quiet, our hearts were full of accomplishment and anticipation for the future. We're planning that once Noah graduates from college and his job is stable, we'll finally relax, maybe even travel and see the world. Life after middle age seemed to unfold like a new scroll. Thanks to our child's success, I thought everything about the Arthur family had become a distant memory from a past life, never to stir up any waves again. Until that cold winter evening. Thorn and I had just returned from a walk when we spotted a dark figure hunched at the building's entrance. As I got closer, I could see it was an old woman, dressed in thin clothes and shivering from the cold. Her hair was messy and white, and her face was covered in deep wrinkles and grime. She heard footsteps and looked up. In the dim light, it took me a while to recognize her, and then I was shocked to realize it was my mom. What was she doing here, and looking like this, the moment she saw me? A flicker of light sparked in her clouded eyes. She struggled to stand, but her body, stiff from the long exposure to cold, nearly caused her to fall. Syra, Syra, her voice was hoarse and faint, choked with tears. Mom, finally found you. As I looked at my mother, huddled and disheveled in the biting wind, I felt a sudden sense of disorientation. The domineering, stubborn, and even somewhat overbearing mother from my memories could hardly be reconciled with the frail, pitiable old woman before me. Thorn clearly recognized her too. He frowned and instinctively stepped forward half a pace, positioning himself slightly in front of me. Mom, I finally spoke up, my voice raspy. How did you end up like this? She seemed to have grabbed onto a lifeline. Tears streamed down her aged face as she began sobbing incoherently. It's all gone, everything's gone. Your father, he had a cerebral infarction last winter. They couldn't save him. He's gone. After the funeral, the house felt so empty that heartless Arthur, egged on by that woman he took up with, sold our old house and ran off with the money and his younger son. No one knows where they went. I've got nowhere to live, no one to care for me. My heart sank like a stone. She was crying so hard she could barely catch her breath, reaching out with her bony hand to grab my arm. Syra, I know I was wrong. I was foolish before. I'm so sorry, but I'm truly at the end of my rope now. Please, for the sake of bringing you into this world, take me in. I'll do anything for you. I'll work like a slave. The bitter wind whipped through her disheveled, graying hair. Her thin clothes offered no protection against the biting cold, and her entire body trembled violently, her lips turning a dark, bruised purple. Seeing her in such a pitiful state and listening to her tearful confession, it would be a lie to say my heart wasn't moved at all. After all, this was the woman I had called Mom for decades, but the despair from my past life, the rupture in this one, and Tyler and Chloe's identical resentment and demands, it all poured over me like buckets of ice water, instantly dousing the faint flicker of tenderness that had just begun to warm my heart. So now that you're at the end of your rope, you finally realize you were wrong. Now you come crawling to the daughter you labeled heartless and selfish. And what about when you forced me into marriage, pressured me to take in the kids, used emotional blackmail time and again, even cursed at me, my father's passing, Arthur absconding with the funds? These tragedies are regrettable, but trace them back to their source. Aren't they the consequences of their own repeated choices, indulging my sister's unreasonable demands, trivializing my happiness? It all came back to haunt them. I didn't move. Just watched her quietly, watched her shivering in the bitter wind, pleading desperately. Thorn stood by in silence, watching me quietly as he awaited my decision. Time seemed to freeze. The motion-activated light in the hallway went out, leaving only the faint glow from a distant street lamp to outline her hunched silhouette. After a long pause, I finally spoke, my voice cutting clearly through the cold air. "Mom, it's freezing. Please get up first," thinking I was relenting. Hope flickered in her eyes as she struggled to straighten up, but I continued, "I can't keep you here." Her face, moments ago filled with hope, shattered into utter despair and disbelief. "Syra, you're really going to stand by and watch your mother freeze and starve to death out there?" "I'm your mother, you are my mother," I repeated, my heart cold. "So, I won't watch you freeze or starve to death." I turned to Thorn and said, "Thorn, go get a room at the hotel next door for Mom. Pay for a month, and buy her some food and warm clothes." Thorn paused for a moment, then understood what I meant and nodded. "All right, I'll go now." "No, I'm not going to a hotel," Mother shrieked, lunging to grab me. "I want to stay home. I want to stay with you." "Syra, do you hate me that much? You won't even let me in the door." I dodged her hand, stepping back. My voice remained calm, yet held an undeniable firmness. "Mom, I thought we'd already made some things clear. The bond between us, as mother and daughter, was broken long ago. Each time you forced me to sacrifice my family, even cursed me." I looked her in the eyes and said, word for word, "Out of gratitude for raising me, when you're in trouble, I can provide you with basic shelter, food, and clothing, so you won't end up on the streets. That's the absolute most I can do. But my home, you can no longer enter. My life, you can no longer disrupt. This is the calmest, yet most brutal mercy I can offer." My mother completely collapsed, sitting on the ground, wailing like a wounded beast, filled with despair and regret. I don't know if she regretted her past actions, or if she regretted the failure of her current schemes. Thorn quickly completed the formalities. It was a small, modest motel nearby, but it was enough to provide shelter. He walked towards the hotel, supporting his mother, who could barely walk, and carrying the newly bought food and cotton clothes. I didn't follow them. I just stood there, watching their figures disappear into the night. The cold wind was still biting, feeling like knives against my face, yet, strangely, my heart felt at peace. I looked up at the warm light emanating from my own window. That is my home, the fortress Thorn, Noah, and I built together, brick by brick. It holds our struggles, our laughter, and our future. I won't let anyone, under any pretext, tear it down again. Neither emotional blackmail nor playing the victim will sway me anymore. I turned and strode resolutely into the building, pressing the elevator button. As the elevator slowly ascended, my reflection stared back at me from the mirrored walls. My eyes were clear, holding a sense of peace and resilience that comes from having weathered many storms. This time, I've finally severed all the chains that bound me. The rest of my life, I'll live only for myself, and for those I love and who love me. Story 2. I was a celestial goddess whose body was stolen during my mortal trial. Meanwhile, the dewdrop sprite I once saved rejoiced in its heart. I've finally become the goddess. Thank you, Theus. Later, she used my body to romance the demon sovereign, suffering torment that sparked a war across 3 realms. In the end, they actually got to live happily ever after and raise children together. While I met a tragic end in the aftermath of war, when I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of my mortal trial. The demon beast seized the celestial dew herb to devour it, but I merely flicked my sleeve and walked away. How could I suddenly go blind like this? I can't see a thing, can't hear clearly either. I was reborn on the day of my tribulation at Creek Mountain. Thick fog enveloped everything, with countless demonic beasts lurking in the darkness, poised to strike. My sword trembled slightly in my hand, not out of fear, it was sheer resentment and fury. Help! Goddess, save me. Ahead, a familiar voice cried out, revealing an all-too-familiar scene. A century-old spirit herb that had just attained human form was being strangled by a demonic beast, shrieking in terror, yet her eyes brimmed with excitement. Thus, if Goddess Alicia saves me, can I become her? Exactly. Goddess Alicia cares deeply for all living beings. She won't stand idly by, she'll intervene any moment now. Through the mist, Ori and Thea's conversation reached my ears word for word. Wiping the blade with my fingers, golden blood dripped from its tip onto the ground. A smirk curled my lips. The goddess loves all mortals, but do you truly count among them? She's coming. She's here. Ori flushed with excitement as I approached sword in hand, oblivious to the suddenly agitated demon beasts around us. I'm the divine maiden by birth. My blood lures magical beasts more than any elixir ever could, just as expected. The beast gripping Ori's eyes burned crimson, its grip so vicious her vision whitened. What's going on? Why isn't she making her move? Ori pressed Theus urgently, but he merely told her to wait longer. Save me, goddess. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached out with trembling hands, the very picture of vulnerability. In my past life, I fell for this exact act, charging through demonic beasts' attacks to rescue her, but now, I shook my head and glanced around warily. Did someone just speak? I can't hear a thing. Ori's hand froze midair, her face a picture of shock. The magical beast that had been frozen in fear at my presence tentatively opened its mouth and licked Ori's face. Ori instantly retched, her fingertips turning white as she shoved the beast's head away, tears streaming down her face. She looked so fragile and pitiful, but I still think those who died in that war because of her were far more pitiful. I hear something. Sounds like it's coming from behind. I raised my head and clapped, ignoring the Ori and demon beasts mere meters away, then resolutely turned my back. The monsters trying to ambush me from behind recoiled in terror when I suddenly turned around. Ori remained silent, as if she'd lost all hope in my rescue attempt. Is she out of her mind? After a moment of silence, Theas spoke hesitantly. She wasn't like this before. While I could hear Theas and Ori's conversation, the beast holding her certainly couldn't. That creature would never have imagined Ori being Thea's favorite. Seeing that I didn't react to her, the monster grew bolder. It opened its foul-smelling maw and bit off Ori's head in one snap, yet the voice in my ears didn't cease with her death. It grew even clearer. Theas, I must become Alicia. I will conquer Kale. I took a deep breath and slew the demonic beast. Ori's mangled corpse lay motionless to the side. Even in death, cultivators retain traces of immortal chi in their remains. But Ori didn't. Her very existence seemed out of sync with the entire world. In a daze, I recalled my past life. It was right here that I saved Ori, the celestial pearl herb. The moment I rescued her, our souls switched places. I tried every possible way to switch back, but what's done is done. No mortal can alter fate. She stole away to the mortal realm in my body, scheming to coincidentally meet Kale's human incarnation. I trailed after her, watching their toxic love unfold, a twisted dance of obsession and mutual torment. The crueler Kale treated her, the more desperately she loved him. I don't understand. I truly don't. I asked her why she insisted on loving Kale. Wouldn't focusing on spiritual cultivation be better? Yet she replied, a divine maiden of such noble status should use it to pursue a love so passionate it shakes the three realms. That's when I finally understood. She stole my body just to experience a love affair. This is absolutely ridiculous, but her romance was truly earth-shattering. In the end, Kale waged the celestial demon war to reclaim her, plunging all three realms into chaos. Countless lives perished in that conflict, mine included. That day remains seared into my memory. The heavens darkened as blood stained the skies, the war between immortals and demons cascading onto the mortal world. Children became orphans, wives were widowed, and the world drowned in wails of despair. Ori, who possessed a century's worth of my spiritual power, neither repaired the mortal realm's barrier nor protected the vulnerable. She reveled in the ecstasy of Kale waging war in a fit of rage for her sake, until that voice emerged. Now is the time. Intercept Kale's attack. That's when his love for you will reach its zenith. That was the first time I heard Theas' voice. Theas was merciless to all, yet showed favor only to Ori. Unconsciously, my fists clenched as spiritual energy surged within me. Alicia, a hand settled on my shoulder as a figure materialized behind me. The newcomer wore flowing white robes with celestial grace, though a trace of concern lingered in his cool, composed eyes. Sage, the god of war from the celestial realm, had grown up alongside me since childhood. After calming my surging spiritual energy, I gazed at him with nostalgic longing. It had been so long since I'd last looked at him this way. In my past life, everyone believed my personality had drastically changed due to the tribulations I endured. Only he grew suspicious when first meeting Alicia, whose body now housed Ori's soul. Yet no matter how he tested me, he couldn't force Ori out of my body. In the end, he had no choice but to accept Alicia's radically altered nature. Why did you leave your post in the celestial realm and come down here? Sage averted his gaze uncomfortably, scanning the surrounding demon beast corpses with visible disgust wrinkling his brow. Almost forgot, he's germophobic and can't stand blood. During my meditation, I felt a sudden pang of dread. Came to check on you in case you were in danger. Glad you're unharmed. A beam of sunlight fell from the sky, and I smiled. Forgotten. I'm a divine maiden. Ordinary monsters can't harm me. Sage curled her lips slightly and nodded with a quiet Ori once said she adored Kale the most for his handsome looks and formidable combat skills. I gave Sage a thorough once-over. Ethereal and transcendent, the celestial realm's war deity. Couldn't fathom why she didn't love Sage in her past life. Had she chosen Sage, the three realms would have been spared the flames of war. No sooner had I returned to the celestial realm than Fairy Lyra appeared with her retinue of celestial maidens. Alicia. Perfect timing. The Violet Cloud Palace needs another handmaiden. You may take this one with you, too. With that, she beckoned toward a spot not far away. A sinking feeling hit me as I turned toward the sound. Greetings, Goddess Alicia. I am Ori, a timid fairy maiden, looking nothing like the Pearl Dew herb, approached me with trembling steps and offered a respectful bow. When I remained silent, she nervously twisted the hem of her robe before hastily adding with feigned unease, I've long admired the divine maiden. Please take me as your attendant. I'll serve you with all my heart and devotion. Hearing this, Lyra's fondness for her grew. She gently patted the maiden's shoulder and reassured her, "Come now, Alicia is the kindest goddess in the celestial realm. From now on, follow her lead, learn diligently, work earnestly. Don't hesitate to ask if you're unsure of anything. She won't give you a hard time. Fairy Lyra is like family to me." Having watched me grow up, she knows my temperament better than anyone. Under normal circumstances, taking in a junior fairy attendant wouldn't be any trouble at all, but today, I must decline her kindness. "Aunt Lyra, we lack celestial affinity. I shall stand with the last one in line." I pointed to the end of the procession, where an unassuming, petite celestial maiden stood, ignoring Ori's displeased expression. I walked to the rear and took the young fairy's hand. Fairy Lyra froze for a moment, murmuring, "I don't recall the celestial maiden. Did I bring her here?" Of course she wouldn't remember, since I'd secretly slipped this maiden into the back of the procession while they were all listening to Ori. Not that I could admit that aloud. It was the silent sage who suddenly chimed in. "Aunt Lyra must have been too preoccupied to notice. She's been right behind you this whole time." Sage's impeccable reputation in the celestial realm made his words unquestionable, fighting back tears. Ori forced a smile while trying to console Fairy Lyra. "It's all right, I'm simply not blessed enough to serve the goddess. Truth be told, just being able to see the goddess daily would fulfill my heart's desire." These words melted Fairy Lyra's already tender heart even further. "Alicia, why not take her in too? She's quite capable. Even keeping her around the temple for odd jobs would suffice." I raise an eyebrow with a cordial smile. Though my tone brooks no argument, she's got talent, but lacks character. In her past life, she possessed my body with peerless spiritual roots and centuries of cultivation, yet squandered it all chasing after men. I rarely humiliate anyone in public like this, but Ori doesn't need a face. Her features shift at will. She can become anyone she desires. Stunned by my blunt words, Ori, flushed with humiliation, wrenched free from Aunt Lyra's grasp, and fled in tears. Aunt Lyra watched Ori disappear, then turned to me with a heavy sigh before storming off. "Do you know her?" Back at Violet Cloud Hall, Sage circled the celestial maiden I'd brought home, examining her from all angles before poking her cheek. I swatted his hand away in exasperation. "Never met her." Sage suddenly leaned in close, narrowing his eyes. "Liar, you expect me to believe you don't know how to summon lotus clones to impersonate celestial maidens? I should have known I couldn't fool him. My true form is the golden lotus before Buddha, born with a segment of lotus root. With just a wisp of my spiritual essence, it can transform into any form I desire." Honestly, who exactly is this Ori? I remained silent, simply staring at him like this. We remained locked in this stalemate. I couldn't find the words to begin, nor did I wish to drag him into this. In the end, he was the first to yield, clearing his throat with the tips of his ears tinged red. "Fine, if you won't speak of it. I shan't press. I'll return to my cultivation for now." After Sage left, I stared thoughtfully at my lotus root doppelganger. The bait is set. Now we'll see if Ori takes the hook. But I never expected Ori to be this eager. That night in the Violet Cloud Hall, my meditation was shattered as blood surged up my throat. The spiritual consciousness I'd hidden in the lotus root avatar was crushed. If I'm not mistaken, it's Ori who's now possessing my avatar. For Ori to take over a normal human's body, that person must first save her once. Though my lotus root avatar isn't human, it still contains spiritual consciousness. Theus is being uncharacteristically domineering this time. No more pretenses, just crushing the divine consciousness to take by force. Theus, oh Theus, must you favor her so blatantly? I sealed several vital acupoints on myself, licked the blood from the corner of my mouth, and clenched my fists. If Theus shows no mercy, then blame me not for defying the heavens. I was prepared for anything, but Ori proved even more despicable than I'd imagined. Fearing I might abandon her like before, she actually released the ancient beast Tautai from the celestial prison, knowing Tautia's hunger for human flesh. Ori lured it straight to the dwellings of ordinary immortals, though I could sense my avatar's location. I still arrived a moment too late. The ravenous Tautai had already reduced an entire street to ruins, flames raging everywhere as lesser immortals became mere morsels in its gaping maw. The beast now stood triumphant upon a mound of corpses, one victim clamped between its jaws while another writhed in its clawed grasp. Summoning my soulbound sword, a cyan flash severed Tautia's arm mid-swing. I caught the terrified child as we landed safely on the bloodied ground, simultaneously. Sage's spear pried open the demon's lower jaw, rescuing the half-swallowed victim from its slavering maw. "You save them, I'll handle this thing." Sage flicked blood off his spear and vanished before the words finished echoing. Reappearing before the Tautai, I turned my head toward the fleeing Tautia's path. There, my puppet-controlled doppelganger Ori was sprinting away with 2 children in tow. If I save the child, I'll inevitably end up saving her too. I couldn't help but let out a derisive laugh. Ori, are you really that desperate for my body? I rushed forward, shielding them as my sword deflected the Taudia's attack, that familiar weightless sensation washing over me. Here, it's yours now. Lips trembled, but no sound came forth. Before darkness consumed me, I saw Sage turn abruptly from the distant battle. He seemed to say something, but the words were already beyond my hearing. I awoke in the side chamber of the Violet Cloud Palace. My name is Aloan, a newly appointed handmaiden to Goddess Alicia. Last night, Goddess Alicia and War God Sage defeated an escaped primordial beast together, though the goddess seemed quite injured. At this thought, I scrambled up, hastily freshened myself, and rushed to the kitchen to brew a potent medicinal decoction. I was carrying the medicinal brew when I reached the doorway. To my shock, I saw War God Sage pointing his spear at Goddess Alicia in the hall. Weren't they supposed to be closest allies? Scratching my head, I couldn't make sense of it. Who the hell are you? Where's Alicia? The divine maiden Alicia clutched her wounded chest from last night, sitting delicately on the couch with tearful eyes. If Brother Sage won't care about me, fine, but pointing a gun at me, I am Alicia, who else could I possibly be? Sage scoffed coldly, thrusting his spear forward until it nearly touched Alicia's throat. After she turned 10. She stopped calling me brother. Tell me, who the hell are you? Alicia didn't answer, instead pressing her neck defiantly against the spear's tip. Seeing this, Sage instinctively withdrew his spear. I just knew Brother Sage couldn't bear to hurt me. Alicia's triumphant smile grew even more alluring. Come here, Aloan, that herbal tonic is for me, isn't it? Spotting me by the doorway, Alicia beckoned with a wave. I approached reverently and placed the medicine bowl into Alicia's hands. As I straightened up, I froze in shock. Before me stood the legendary War God Sage with blood-streaked cheeks, disheveled hair, and a white robe marred by stains, its hem even singed with charred holes from flames. This disheveled figure bore no resemblance to the immaculate, dignified sage of battlefield legends. I stole a glance at him. He turned to look at me briefly, but there was something broken in his eyes, a heavy sorrow clinging to him. My heart inexplicably clenched, and I quickly averted my gaze, not daring to look again. Priestess Alicia sipped her medicine leisurely while I stared at my toes, with Sage standing in the hall holding a gun. The three of them remained silent. After what felt like an eternity, a familiar voice finally echoed from outside the hall. All right, I get it. Fairy Lyra burst in, barely stopping her momentum as she grabbed Alicia's wrist. She's missing a fragment of her soul. No wonder she's acting so differently. With proper rest, it'll mend in time. Is that so? Sage's murderous aura dissipated as he lowered his spear upon hearing the diagnosis. Though his eyes remained unreadable, he turned to leave, his steps oddly unsteady. My feet shifted slightly as an urge to rush forward and steady him surged through me. Moments later, I blinked and withdrew my outstretched leg. I'm Aloan, a minor celestial maiden serving Goddess Alicia. After Sage and Lyra departed, only Goddess Alicia and I remained in the grand hall. I stole a glance at her. Goddess Alicia was breathtakingly beautiful even just sitting there. She radiated irresistible charm. I found myself utterly transfixed. Well, noticing my gaze, Alicia touched her face smugly and asked me, "So beautiful?" My answer made Alicia even more delighted. She lifted my chin to examine me closely, then tossed me aside in disdain before suddenly remembering something, her expression darkening. Aloan, where were you last night? A crushing pressure suddenly bore down on me, forcing me to my knees until I couldn't straighten up. As I carefully recalled last night's events, an unfamiliar memory surfaced before my eyes. In the dead of night, I slipped out of the Violet Cloud Palace and unbolted the prison door of the ancient beast Tautai. I even slit my wrist, using blood to lure it toward the mortal immortal's dwelling. At this memory, cold sweat drenched my back. With trembling hands, I rolled up my sleeve. There, unmistakably, was a freshly scabbed gash. Was it me? Did I unleash the Tautai? I muttered to myself, my face twisted in terror. The goddess Alicia raised her hand, and a barbed scourge materialized ominously in the air. This whip was forged to punish celestials, each barb enchanted with a sealing curse that seared the very soul upon impact. You've committed wrongdoing, now you shall face retribution. The moment the words left her lips, Alicia swung her arm and the divine whip came crashing down across my back. I felt my soul shudder from the impact as a mouthful of blood sprayed forth. Another lash. I doubled over, instinctively trying to curl into a protective ball, but there was nowhere to hide. Thud, thud, thud. My back ached, my body burned, my very soul screamed in agony. Really, I held on until darkness claimed me. When I came to again, I found myself lying in the maidservants' quarters of the side palace. I shook my head weakly, feeling an odd emptiness in my mind as if something were missing. My limbs felt strangely uncoordinated, almost foreign to me, but the sharp pain shooting through my back quickly pushed all other thoughts from my mind. My mouth was parched, yet not a single mate could be found in the side chamber. Is Priestess Alicia truly leaving me here to die? The thought sent a jolt of panic through me. Never before had I feared death so acutely. There were still too many things left undone. Clutching my bloodied body, I slowly rose from the bed. I intended to pour myself a cup of celestial nectar. The immortal realm's sacred water nourishes divine forms, enhancing spiritual powers. It gradually heals wounds as well. My body ached terribly the moment I got out of bed. Searing pain from my torn wound sent me crashing to my knees. Blood slowly seeped through the bandages. I crawled forward inch by inch, dragging myself to the table to pour a cup of healing elixir. Though merely a handmaiden with modest celestial powers, Fairy Alicia had beaten me so severely I couldn't muster even a trace of magic, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to drag myself out of bed step by step. Goddess Alicia was always so compassionate she wouldn't even harm celestial insects, let alone refuse aid to the dying. Who in the celestial realm would believe she'd whip her own handmaiden with a divine scourge like this? I recalled the look in Goddess Alicia's eyes as she lashed me, pure loathing and disgust, and burning envy. Envy, you say? I shook my head hastily. Impossible, it must have been my imagination. The goddess reigns supreme, far beyond what a mere mortal like me could ever aspire to. How could she possibly be jealous of me? After much effort, I'd poured half a glass of water and was about to drink. A surge of celestial energy struck again, knocking the sacred water from my hand. Parched with thirst, I didn't even have time to look up at the intruder. I hastily dropped to my knees and began lapping at the ground. The cool surface yielded to my tongue as I drank the mystical liquid. Finally, I got my drink. Pfft, came a woman's mocking laugh from ahead. With great effort, I raised my head to see the figure before me. Who else could it be but the divine maiden Alicia? Alicia glared at me with venomous eyes, slowly drawing her god-slaying whip. How tenacious you are, still alive after all this. A shiver ran down my spine. Could Lady Alicia truly want me dead? But I'm her handmaid, though I suppose it's justified. My transgression was unforgivable. Even if she strikes me down, I deserve no less. The thought suddenly flashed through my mind. The divine whip struck me again, leaving me trembling in agony. I couldn't even utter the words, "Goddess, spare my life." A terrified thought surged within me. Strike me dead, goddess, and me now. 5 lashes later, my dress was completely soaked in blood. No matter how excruciating the pain, I refused to utter a sound. How dull. Why won't you scream? Why won't you cry out? I stared blankly at the contorted, roaring face of Goddess Alicia. When did the goddess become like this? Wait, what was the goddess originally like, anyway? Why can't I remember anything at all? Bowing my head and kneeling on the ground, I spoke with trembling lips. Even if the goddess strikes me dead, it would be justified. This humble maid dare not beg for mercy. How tedious. The goddess Alicia before me shouted in anger once more. Then, as if remembering something, she lifted my chin. Very well, I'll let you live, so you may witness your own wretched downfall. But before that, I'll give you a little punishment. Punishment. My heart skipped a beat. After being whipped into this state, surely. Doesn't this already count as punishment? So this is the hand that opened the prison door. Ha! Alicia seized the scarred hand and viciously drove her nails into the wound. For, flesh tore open, blood gushing forth. I screamed in agony, my entire body convulsing. She snapped off each of my fingernails one by one. Spare me, goddess, I'll never dare again. At this point I couldn't endure anymore. Begging pitifully for what felt like an eternity. The face buried in the ground slowly curled into a smirk. Alicia wiped the blood from her nails with satisfaction, nodding approvingly. I steadied myself on the ground before kowtowing to her in tearful gratitude, shaking as I rose. My grateful expression darkened the moment I turned away. A leopard can't change its spots. Ori, your little habits remain as vicious as ever. Ever since I realized the dewdrop herb wasn't your true form, I've been plotting how to eliminate you. Theus aids you, granting you the power to assume any mortal guise. From beginning to end, I was your only target. Rather than being haunted by your obsession, I'd stake everything on one throw. Fortunately, my gamble paid off. The moment you transformed into that celestial maiden, everything fell into my plan. Rather than letting you haphazardly arrange a body for me, I'd prefer crafting one for you myself. I suspect you'd be willing to swap bodies with someone around me, preferably an unfamiliar subordinate. Only through such an exchange could you strut before me with newfound arrogance, so I deliberately released a lotus root clone disguised as a celestial maiden. After you switched bodies with her, I swore to save you if anything went wrong. I was fully prepared to do so, but you still didn't trust me, so you unleashed the Tautai, and you dragged 2 children into this, forcing my hand to rescue you. A filthy mind sees filth everywhere. Truth be told, after finalizing the plan, there's still one thing that's been really bothering me. The problem is, after swapping bodies with you, I'll lose all my memories. How can I possibly recover them? That's when I remembered your little quirk from our past life. You always had this habit of digging your nails into people's flesh until they bled. I extracted a wisp of my soul essence, imprinted all my memories within it, and concealed it beneath my fingernail. The moment your nail touches my blood, I'll reclaim this soul fragment and restore my memories. Ori, our war has only just begun. Step by step, walk the path to destruction I've laid out for you. Not even Theos can save you this time. Before I knew it, I'd left the Violet Cloud Hall and arrived at Sage's Lotus Pavilion. Sage was naturally aloof, with only 2 attendants serving in his hall, with practiced ease. I slipped past the attendants and reached beneath his bedchamber window. The window creaked open gently. Sage sat by the couch, his inner robe slipping off to reveal pale, toned chest, tilted his head. He carefully dusted medicinal powder on his back, wounds from the Taotai attack. No doors in this house, had to use the window. Percy had been his personal guard since childhood. When I didn't respond, he turned around, our eyes met, and the medicine bottle slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. A gust of wind swept by, and the next moment I found myself pulled inside the house. Who are you? I forced a smile. He'd clearly seen me just this morning, but hearing the tremor in his voice, I couldn't bring myself to tease him further. What do you think? Before I could finish speaking, he pulled me into his embrace. He nuzzled against my neck like an overgrown puppy reunited with its owner. Sniffing repeatedly, a sudden daze came over me. We hadn't been this close since childhood. Not bad at all. In both lifetimes, he was the first to notice my absence. I raised my arms to return his embrace. Ouch, ouch, ouch. The moment I lifted my arms, a searing pain shot through my back, making me cry out instantly. Hearing my cry, Sage immediately released me, channeling a surge of pure spiritual energy into my body. I'm wounded from the divine whip. Where's your medicine? Patch me up quick. Sage's face darkened instantly, spear in hand. He took a long stride toward the exit. How dare she strike you with the divine whip? Get back here. I sat down by the bed. Sage immediately turned around, now holding several bottles of medicinal powder. I loosened my garments, letting them slip halfway down my waist, yet the person before me remained motionless. Looking up, I saw Sage's normally pale face flushed crimson, their gaze darting nervously everywhere but at me. I found it rather amusing. Only after lying on the couch did I wake him. Come here for your medicine. He let out a hoarse that sounded alarmingly rough. His touch was feather-light as he applied the medicine. Careful not to hurt me, his index finger dusted with powder glided slowly across the wound. I squirmed slightly, not from pain, but from the tickling sensation. Yet how could I possibly voice this? Are your fingers tickling me? Frustrated, I buried my face in the soft pillow, my breathing slightly labored. To my surprise, he leaned in close to my ear and asked with complete seriousness, "What's wrong? Does it hurt?" As she spoke, she gently blew on the wound on my back. Strands of her hair cascaded down, brushing against my shoulder, each touch tugging at my heartstrings. My face burned crimson, my ears scalding hot. Good heavens, I never knew having wounds dressed could be this agonizing. The torturous bandaging finally ended. I remained sprawled on his bed, making no move to get up. He somehow produced a palm leaf fan and began gently wafting air over my back. Watching his earnest expression, I couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going to ask why I've ended up like this?" He smiled, his eyes brimming with trust. "You must have your reasons for doing things, share them if you wish, or just go ahead if you'd rather not. Just remember one thing, I'll always be by your side, no matter what you become." I held his hand without a word, simply smiling, before dawn broke. I returned to the Violet Cloud Palace. I began packing my belongings while Ori still slept. Knowing her next destination, I had to prepare certain things in advance. Just as expected, at first light Ori and I slipped away to the mortal realm. In this world, aside from me, the only one who occupies her thoughts is Demon Lord Kale. Little does she know, I've already been in contact with Kale, the same mortal realm, the same tea house. In the elegant private chamber on the second floor sat a man with jet black hair and dark robes, his features devastatingly handsome yet undeniably commanding. "Wait here for me." With those words, Ori tossed me the bundle and barged in alone. I leisurely took a seat, ordered a pot of fine tea, and prepared to enjoy the show. In their past life, Ori had fallen for Kale at first sight in this very tea house, to be precise. She'd already fallen for Kale before even meeting him. Just then, angry shouts erupted from the second floor. The door burst open violently, sending a pink blur flying backward. I hastily dropped my teacup and rushed over with feigned concern, but a dark figure intercepted first. Kale burst out of the room and caught Ori midair, landing with her. "Kale, how dare you hold her?" Another figure shot out from the room, their once charming voice now laced with fury. "This is Vala, the Demon Realm Princess." Startled by the voice, Kale suddenly came to his senses and loosened his grip, sending Ori tumbling onto the ground. I rushed to help Ori up, but my gaze kept shifting between Kale and Vala. Could it be? He's so incredibly handsome, Ori's infatuated voice whispered beside me. I was speechless but nodded along politely. Vala stood fuming with crossed arms as Kale rushed over, fanning her with an unfolded folding fan while showering her with apologies. I lowered my eyes and whispered into Ori's ear, "Goddess." "Kale seems quite close with Vala." Ori brushed it off, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Soon, I'll be the only one in his eyes." Theas's voice chimed in at just the right moment. "Exactly. As long as you stay near Kale, I can make him treat you well. Once he regains consciousness, he'll inevitably hurt you, and that pain will make his true feelings surface." My heart sank at this revelation. "Theas, you've really thought of everything for her, haven't you? If Kale doesn't hurt Ori, you make sure he treats her well. If Kale hurts Ori, he'll develop genuine feelings for her. Either way, Ori ends up with Kale. But I've got a third option." After that, Ori shamelessly dragged me along to follow Kale and Vala everywhere. No matter where they went, Ori could always pinpoint their exact location. The moment Ori appeared, Kale would briefly fall under Thea's control, compelled to treat Ori with kindness. This made Vala absolutely furious. After waking up, Kale would lash out at Ori to appease Vala. Over time, the disgust in Kale's eyes when looking at Ori faded. Everything unfolded exactly as Theas had calculated. In the end, they fled back to the demon realm in panic. Ori naturally followed along. That night, after putting Ori to bed, I slipped away and materialized in the ink-stained palace of the demon realm. The grand hall was brilliantly lit, yet surprisingly unguarded. Only 3 figures occupied the chamber. Kale sat on the steps with his head propped miserably in his hands, his stunning face devoid of its usual radiant confidence. Vala, however, remained far more composed. She settled beside him, casually tossing grapes from a large bunch into her mouth, occasionally remembering to pop one into Kale's. Yet the moment I entered the hall, my gaze was instantly drawn to that solitary white figure standing in the corner. There's always a lonely air about Sage when he stands alone under the lamplight. But when he turns to look at me, his eyes always light up with warmth. I quirked a smile and winked at him, though my words were meant for Kale. "See, told you I was right." Kale looked up with an extremely complicated expression. I believe you. Now tell me your plan." Instead of answering directly, I moved to stand beside Sage. "I have one condition." Kale stood up, shaking off his slump with his trademark smirk. But the next instant, his face contorted in a painful twitch. "Ow. That hurts." Vala clapped her hands, finally releasing her death grip on his waist. "Cut the act already, Priestess Alicia." "Spit it out." I arched an eyebrow. I'd never told them I was the real Alicia. Seems Vala isn't the hot-headed simpleton she pretended to be. The Celestial and Nether realms forge an alliance, 1,000 years without war. What's all the fuss about? This is easy. I never liked fighting to begin with. Kale rubbed his lower back with one hand while draping the other over Vala's shoulder. "Let's talk about how to handle Ori's situation first. One word: pretend." Kale frowned. "What's the act? You don't actually expect me to like that woman, do you?" Sage stepped forward and mirrored Kale's gesture, resting his hand lightly on my shoulder with practiced ease. "If you ignored his bright red earlobes, that is. What we're really doing is pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. Conversations between smart people require no elaboration." After finalizing all the details, Kale asked the million-dollar question: "How can you guarantee I won't develop feelings for Ori?" I shot back: "Would you love someone just because you hurt them?" Kale shook his head. Then I voiced my thoughts: "So I suspect it wasn't real affection, just addiction. The more you hurt her, the more addicted you become, until cruelty feels like love." I reached into Sage's pocket and pulled out a white orb the size of a goose egg. "This is the Celestial's Clarity Pearl. It preserves the purest thoughts of an unclouded mind. When dark whispers sway you, channel your spirit energy into the pearl. Its stored essence will purge all foreign desires from your heart. But be warned, this process can be excruciating. The darker the thoughts, the more agonizing it becomes. Like 10,000 ants gnawing at your heart or having your tendons ripped from your bones." Kale took the bead with a bold laugh. "This is nothing compared to losing one's true self." Yet later, we still underestimated Thea's seduction. As planned, Ori will become Kale's concubine in the demon realm, and I, as her handmaiden, will move into Emoren Palace with her. In Emoren Palace, Vala reigns supreme. She often gives Ori a hard time. Meanwhile, Kale, alternating between lucidity and being controlled, acts erratically, constantly wavering between Ori and Vala. Ori longed for Kale's affection but refused to endure this slow-burning torment. With my whispered encouragement, she finally reached her breaking point. She resolved to poison Vala during Kale's inspection tour. In her past life, this very act had rendered Vala infertile. When Kale severed her celestial bones, it also made Kale see clearly into her own heart, only this time the person she sent was me. I'd long since swapped the poison for medicinal powder. This powder would only cause stomach pain for one night, with identical symptoms but completely different toxicity. Divine Maiden, it's done. After slipping the poison, I quietly returned to Ori to report. Ori's face lit up with excitement, eagerly awaiting the good news. Just as expected, within moments the Vala Palace erupted in chaos. Physicians summoned. Servants scurrying about, the commotion clearly signaling a grave illness. Ori was so thrilled that even their cheeks flushed pink with excitement. After today, Kale will finally truly love me. Let's see how Vala can compete with me now. Upon hearing the news, Kale rushed back from outside and went straight to see Vala. Ori sent me to gather information, and I came running back in a panic. Divine Maiden, disaster strikes. Vala survived, but appears to be infertile. The Demon Lord is furious and heading our way. Let's run for it. Ori laughed with smug satisfaction. I'm not scared at all. My Kale will fall for me today. I pretended not to understand, putting on a puzzled expression. Of course a simpleton like you wouldn't understand. This is perfect love. Two souls bound in love and conflict, where every wound I inflict on you cuts deeper into my own heart. Ori's face flushed with intoxicated delight as she spoke. 6. Until I realized you'd taken root in my heart, irreplaceable, I'd move heaven and earth to win you back. Oh, this is my perfect love. I nearly rolled my eyes, but held back, because an enraged Kale kicked the palace doors wide open. His eyes burned crimson, every inch a tyrant. Alicia, how dare you? Ori's throat was squeezed as tears dripped one by one onto Kale's hand, looking utterly pitiful and wronged. The cold teardrops seemed to bring Kale back to his senses. Though his expression remained terrifying, the grip loosened slightly. Seeing Kale's hesitation, the nearby servant immediately stepped forward and said, Your Majesty the Demon Lord, this celestial being has brought such suffering upon the princess, she must face the ultimate punishment, have her immortal bones excised. Ori appeared frightened upon hearing this, yet her eyes betrayed a glimmer of anticipation. Then came her delicate, honeyed voice calling out, I. Kale's hand trembled slightly, his eyes revealing genuine reluctance. This was no pretense. Every ounce of pain Ori suffered at Kale's hands, Kale endured tenfold from the mind's eye pearl. I don't know how he's endured this long, nor how much longer he can last. All I see is Vala's increasingly downcast eyes. When administering the medicine, I asked Vala if Kale could hold on any longer. Vala shed tears, shook her head, then nodded slowly. My heart sank as I had to bring the contingency plan into play. In the end, Kale personally severed Ori's celestial bones, yet he cradled her broken body on the altar for 3 full days. Anyone could see the overwhelming love Kale held for her. This is already the 10th Mind's Eye Pearl. I never imagined the Mind's Eye Pearls could shatter from purging someone's malevolent thoughts, yet Kale managed to break 9 of them. I'll handle this personally. Vala wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes, took the heart-light pearl from my hand, and resolutely walked toward Kale. In the past, whenever Vala appeared near Kale, his gaze would never leave her, but now, he didn't even bother to look up at her. Come back to me. I miss you. Vala placed the Mind's Eye Pearl on Kale's forehead. A surge of spiritual energy flowed from her fingertips through the orb and into Kale's mind. Kale's face contorted. His eyes flew wide open as he unleashed a powerful gust of wind from his palm straight toward Vala. I dashed forward to intercept the attack, murmuring, Leave the fighting to me. Focus. Vala cast me a grateful glance. There was no time to respond as the next strike came. The gales grew fiercer, the spiritual energy more intense. To shield Vala completely, I had to intercept every blow with my own body. Liar, you're lying. This can't be true. I love Alicia. Kale's screams grew louder as his spiritual energy erupted, leaving no living beings within a 10-meter radius. I had no choice but to carry Vala away from him. You're all liars. He's completely lost control. We need to run. Vala stood frozen in place, unable to move. With no other choice, I knocked her out with a swift strike and carried her over my shoulder. Just as we exited the demon realm, Sage came rushing toward us. How's Kale? What happened to him? I shook my head and handed Vala to him. He didn't make it. Let's proceed with Plan B. Sage remained silent. Shortly after we returned to the celestial realm, Ori unexpectedly came back on his own. Why did you abandon me in the demon realm and flee back to the celestial realm alone? Though physically weakened, Ori wore a radiant smile. When the demon sovereign went berserk that day, slaughtering everyone in sight, I had no choice but to flee. How did you escape, Divine Maiden? Ori let out a derisive chuckle. Kale's utterly devoted to me, no need to escape. When I said I needed some air, he let me out without a fuss. I was still somewhat puzzled at this point. Congratulations, Divine Maiden, but since the Demon Lord has fallen for you, why not stay in the demon realm and live happily ever after with him? Ori looked at me like I was an absolute idiot. I told you, we need an epic celestial war. Only by waging a grand battle for love would it be truly perfect. I shook my head with a wry smile. In the end, I still couldn't comprehend her. When we could have just stayed together in peace, she insists on starting a war just to prove her love. How absurd, that such an absurd person remains Thea's favorite. Theas must have lost his mind. Shortly after Ori's return, the celestial demon war erupted just as she desired, at the Severance Peaks. Sage led the celestial army atop the cliffs while Kale commanded the demonic forces below. Their eyes met across the battlefield. But none of the old familiarity from their talks in the ink-stained palace remained. "Give Alicia back to me." Cale's eyes burned crimson as he leveled his sword at Sage. "Talk to my gun first." Sage swung her spear sideways, standing her ground. The two sides clashed, flames erupting everywhere. I didn't follow Ori because I knew exactly what she'd do. This time, I descended to the mortal realm. In the previous cycle, the tri-realm barrier was breached, plunging the human world into devastating warfare with countless casualties. Though Sage has reinforced the barrier in this era, I still can't shake this unease. The horizon burned with war for 3 days and nights, claiming innumerable soldiers from both factions. In the end, only Sage and Cale remained standing in battle. Both were exhausted, mustering their strength for one final strike. This blow would surely end it all. I'm waiting for Ori to make the save. But it wasn't Ori who appeared on the battlefield to stop them, it was Vala. She stepped between the two and threw her arms around Cale. "Wake up, Aya." With one last glance at Cale, Vala braced herself to take the blow. This strike would surely be fatal. Cale's crimson eyes gradually faded, returning to clarity, yet he couldn't retract his attack. In the blink of an eye, a white figure descended from the sky. "Get lost. This is my moment to shine." Ori, who pursued perfect love with absolute devotion, would never let anyone steal this historic moment from her. Boom! The shockwave of the attack reverberated across the sky. Ori was shattered to pieces. Cale rushed forward and embraced Vala, frantically caressing her face with trembling hands as tears streamed down his own cheeks. "I'm sorry, so sorry. It's my fault. I couldn't hold on." Vala shook her head through tears. "I know you tried your best." "Huh. So you're actually serious about this, Demon Lord?" The demon army that had been lying dead suddenly rose from the ground, scratching their heads in confusion. A nearby soldier yanked the sword from his chest and immediately kicked someone. "Our demon lord is brilliant. This must be part of his act. Damn this hard ground. I've been lying here for 3 days while the demon lord and war god keep fighting. That's our war god for you, utterly invincible." A bloodied celestial soldier staggered to his feet, gazing starstruck at the figure soaring overhead. "Get off me, you damn pansy, you weigh a ton." Upon closer look, there was another person pinned beneath him. When the war ended, I flew straight to Sage. For some reason, I desperately wanted to hug him, so I did. "Ah, Alicia." I buried my face in his chest, laughing at how this man could get so nervous he started stuttering. Who knew Brother Sage could be so innocent? "Need me to teach you a thing or two?" Cale flew over with Vala in tow, that devil-may-care smirk back on his face. I expected Sage to refuse, but to my surprise, he nodded. "Next time you're in the celestial realm, drinks are on me." "Haha, you're on." Turns out, before losing control, Cale would drill his troops daily by telling them the celestial demon war was just theater, no need to take it seriously. The demon soldiers didn't buy it at first, but he hammered it home so relentlessly that every last grunt could recite it in their sleep. Even after Cale stopped saying it, every soldier had those words etched into their minds. During battles, when we saw those feeble attacks from the celestial troops, those who knew just knew. My so-called plan B was simply having Vala take the final blow. Since Theos believes grievously wounding a loved one can restore their sanity, if Ori can use it, then Vala can too. I'm gambling on Vala calling Cale back, and betting Ori will push Vala away at the last moment. She's so obsessed with perfect love that she'd disregard others' lives. She'd never let anyone else have this moment. Those who belittle others shall themselves be belittled. 15 days passed in such peaceful tranquility. 7. My lotus root avatar was originally part of the golden lotus, so reverting to its true form came naturally. The moment Ori perished, I couldn't wait to reclaim Alicia's appearance and identity. It's not about reclaiming my identity. I'm sending Theos a message. I'm waiting for Theos to realize we've fooled him, waiting for divine retribution to strike. By restoring my true identity, I'm blatantly telling Theos, your favorite was outplayed to death. This time, I told no one and wished for no company by my side. That day, I sat in meditation within the violet cloud hall. A sudden premonition struck me. Lifting my gaze, I saw thick storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Just as I'd anticipated, it's finally come. Heavenly tribulations are divided into 10 tiers, and all immortals must endure them to ascend. The most formidable is the Black Lightning Tribulation for ascending to godhood, but this time, the thunderclouds turned with an unprecedented crimson hue. I stood defenseless in the courtyard. I won't resist this time, unless he vents his rage. None of the 3 realms will know peace. Honestly, I really wish I could stay with him a little longer. The first heavenly thunder struck. I coughed up a mouthful of blood. Ha, Theos, oh Theos. You who should be impartial and merciless, yet show favoritism to but one. What kind of Theos are you? The second crimson thunder struck. My bones shattered, leaving me unable to rise. Scarlet lightning coiled around my limbs, suspending me midair. Do you really think this will lead you to victory? Theos' voice echoed as countless specks of light converged from the horizon. coalescing into humanoid forms. You're but an ant trying to shake a mighty tree. For every one you destroy, I can create countless more. Alicia, don't presume to challenge divine will. As the words faded, dark clouds turned and a colossal crimson thunderbolt, large enough to engulf the entire violet cloud palace, crashed down from the heavens. Gazing at that scarlet lightning, I felt not an ounce of fear within me. He was right. When mortals defy the heavens, the odds of victory are less than 1 in 10,000, yet even that sliver of hope is enough to make men throw away their lives without hesitation. Those humanoid lights appear infinite in number, yet contain not a shred of true consciousness. By all accounts, this is my victory. If there's one regret, I closed my eyes, their image surfacing in my mind as a single tear fell. Don't be afraid, I'm here, I chuckled bitterly to myself. Even goddesses hallucinate when death comes knocking, but soon I realized this was no illusion. When my eyes opened again, a silver spear spanned the sky, dividing me from the lightning, life on the side, death on the other. Sage, how could he be here? I clearly sent him away. I tried to tell him to leave, but my tongue felt numb. No words would come out. Thea snorted coldly as the lightning intensified. A single shot pierced the heavens, shredding his sleeves as blood streamed down the spear's shaft. Again, twin thunderbolts struck, staining the sky crimson. Sage dove upward, his jade crown reduced to ashes, raven hair whipping wildly as he coughed blood onto his chest. He wiped the blood from his lips with the back of his hand, then aimed his gun at the storm clouds. Again, thunderbolts split the heavens as the world turned upside down. Blood droplets sprayed through the air, landing warm upon my face. Sage lay motionless in the crater, eyes shut tight, his face smeared with grime and half his body soaked in blood, barely breathing. My heart clenched like a fist, the pain so sharp even the tears trailing down my cheeks turned crimson. Drop by drop, they fell onto his face. My warrior sage, the one who'd always prized cleanliness above all, now his crown lies shattered, raven locks cascading down, his body drenched in blood. This isn't how he should look, just a pathetic clown. Now, it's your turn. The lightning begins gathering toward me once more. It's over, all of it. Cough, I'm still alive. You won't lay a finger on her. Sage staggered to his feet, leaning on his cracked spear, then threw himself in front of me. No, I shook my head frantically. Stop answering. Just stop, Sage. Get out of here. Run. He raised his hand to wipe the bloody tears from my face, only to find his palm charred black. He leaned in, devoutly kissing away every tear with the only part of his lips still clean. I was ready to tough it out. But I'll admit, he's got some skills, Alicia. Promise me you'll take care of yourself when I'm gone, eat properly, no picky habits, sleep and if dawn training's too much, bring backup for underworld hunts instead of charging solo, and when you're bored, grab a drink with Vala's crew. With that, he gave me a warm smile. Don't think about me too often. Someday, you might meet someone better suited for you. No, that won't happen. I desperately tried to speak, but he pulled me into a tight embrace, then he turned, charging alone with his spear toward the dark clouds. Again, they say Theus is just yet merciless. Scoundrel, are you truly Theus? Sage hurled his spear skyward as blinding golden light erupted from his body. This is it. I struggled like a madman, letting lightning sear into my flesh. The ancient forbidden art, offering divine flesh to Theus, with flesh as the offering and obsession as the path. Summon Theus to deliver justice in this life. The sacrificial offering turned to ashes. Divinity extinguished and the Tao perished, and the spear descended, piercing through Sage's heart and pinning him midair. A golden light shot through the heavens, shaking the earth and sky, scattering both the dark clouds and humanoid specks of light. Who among you dares summon me? Suddenly, an overwhelming pressure filled the space between heaven and earth. I felt a surge of blood and energy in my chest. Unable to suppress the blood gushing from my mouth, my knees buckled to the ground. Overcome with the urge to submit completely, once again, I was forced to my knees by overwhelming power, coughing up blood, yet a chill of realization shot through me. This is the truth. Yes. What in the world is that thing on Ori? A colossal hand formed of thunderclouds materialized in the sky. Its grasp seemed to clutch at something invisible, relentlessly twisting and wrenching. Across heaven and earth echoed Ori's muffled screams of agony. Each scream grew more harrowing than the last. Spare me, I beg you, spare me, until finally, the agonized shrieks cut off abruptly. Only then did I realize, this time, it was Ori and her Theus. It must have completely vanished. What about my sage? Under Theus' overwhelming pressure, I mustered all my cultivation to force myself to look up. O righteous Theus, I beg you to release the war god sage. Gouts of blood spewed from my mouth, staining the snow-white robes crimson. Every immortal meridian in my body had shattered. Yet I stubbornly remained kneeling through the agony. How intriguing. Then the lightning vanished abruptly, the oppressive force lifted, and I collapsed to the ground, sitting dazed on the ground, staring blankly into the void. The violet cloud hull stood serene, with only the massive crater as evidence of the vanished battle. Even the spear-pierced figure had disappeared without a trace. Ouch! 8. The air before them suddenly split open, revealing an abyssal void as a figure came tumbling out. I blinked in disbelief, locking eyes with him. My trembling hand reached out to touch his face, only to freeze midair. I feared this was just a mirage. He seized my hand and pressed it against his warm cheek, the contact shattering me into tears. Oh, hey now, don't cry. See, I'm back safe and sound. I threw myself at him, hands frantically checking his chest, completely unharmed, thank God, remembering what just happened. I punched his shoulder in anger before grabbing Sage's collar to pull him close, tears glistening in both our eyes. As the tears fell, I crushed my lips against his. Later, he revealed to me that neither Ori nor her Theas belonged to this world. They were alien intruders, the true Theas of this realm awakened during his sacrificial rite, erasing Ori and her kind from existence. His survival was solely due to Theas repaying the debt of awakening, and through this, he finally recognized my genuine devotion. From that moment onward, Theas remained as impartial and merciless as ever. A century later, Sage, Kale, Vala and I held a grand joint wedding ceremony. Our union brought détente between celestial and demon realms, establishing a 3-millennium peace treaty. Sage and I would casually visit the demon realm, while Kale and Vala often invited us to mortal theaters, until that fateful day when I sensed Ori's presence in the mortal world again. The situation was critical, so I immediately alerted everyone. What do you mean? Kale reacted the strongest, being completely vulnerable to Ori's Theas system. Vala snapped. I'll go kill her. Frowning, I said, don't act rashly, let's observe first. They were clearly erased by Theas, so why would they suddenly reappear? There must be something fishy going on. After all, not everyone can withstand the divine might of the true Theas. The four of us activated an invisibility spell and followed the woman ahead. From this seemingly ordinary gentlewoman came a conversation with the Theas system, though only I could hear it. You're the Theas system. How can you fail at such a simple task? The delicate-featured woman spoke. I am indeed the Theas system, but I've sustained severe damage and can't use my abilities now, once fully recovered. I'll make you this world's chosen heroine. You'll be able to get whatever your heart desires. The Theas system sounded weak and breathless as it kept speaking to the heroine. I shared the conversation with everyone, and they kept analyzing it non-stop. Looks like the Theas system barely escaped, but not without shedding some skin. It'll need time to recover. Wait, is that woman ahead Ori? Not necessarily, might not be her. The speech patterns don't quite match. Here's a wild thought. Maybe Ori's already gone. After escaping, the Theas system could have found a new host. Makes sense, but we still need to test the waters. All eyes turned toward Kale. Kale went pale. Why is everyone staring at me? Darling, you might need to turn on the charm. Vala giggled behind her hand. Aren't you afraid someone might steal your husband away? Let them try. I've already got little Kale right here, Vala murmured tenderly. Caressing her belly, Kale swept Vala into his arms, beaming. You're pregnant. Watching the lovebirds fawn over each other, Sage and I exchanged a glance inside in resignation. In the end, I made the decision. Fine, I'll go. Vala wants to become me more than anything, so if I suddenly appear before her, she'll definitely have a strong reaction. Be careful. Sage looked at me with concern. After all, if we want the Theas system to disappear, another sacrifice would be required. Another sacrifice would truly mean complete divine annihilation. And neither of us wanted to lose each other. I transformed into my true form and caught up with the elegant maiden ahead. Miss, I smiled, holding a silver hairpin. Did this hairpin that fell on the ground belong to you? The maiden was startled when she saw my face. Then I overheard her conversation with the system. Theas, you promised to grant any wish, even making me the heroine of destiny. I want to be as beautiful as the woman before me, the system exclaimed. Why is she here? Who is she? She's a celestial being, not mortal. You'd best keep your distance. I can only assist with mortal affairs. Oh, all right. Disappointment flickered across the woman's face. Miss, I smiled and twirled the silver hairpin between my fingers. Oh, my apologies. This doesn't belong to me. Understanding dawned on me. I returned the smile before walking over to Sage and the others. That's not Ori. Ori should be completely gone now. The Theas system has severed ties with her. And we don't know this girl at all, but what if she ends up following the same path as Ori? Kale asked me anxiously, recalling the conversation between Theas and that woman. I shook my head. Her counterfeit Theas is badly damaged. It should only work with limited capabilities in the mortal realm, completely useless in both demon and celestial realms. We can't just ignore this, Sage murmured thoughtfully, reminding us. After careful discussion, we reached a decision. We take turns living in the human world, Sage and I for 10 years, then Kale and Vala for another decade, keeping watch over them, and so, Sage and I settled into life in the human realm. Fake Theus seems to be gradually recovering too, and he did grant that woman some peculiar abilities. I assumed a different identity and casually approached her. Surprisingly, even Fake Theus didn't notice. It seems last time she recognized me solely by my appearance. But as for detecting divine energy, it's completely lost that capability now. The woman chosen by the false Theus was named Blythe, daughter of a 5th-rank official in the Cloud Kingdom of the mortal realm, under the false Theus patient tutelage. This woman, who would have otherwise spent her days embroidering at home before becoming a dutiful wife and mother, now aspired to become a court official. She passionately proclaimed, "Women and men are equals. Why should only men be permitted to study and serve in court while women are denied these rights?" Blythe eagerly attended ladies' tea parties and even crashed gentlemen's poetry gatherings. With Fake Theus' guidance, she composed timeless quatrains and perfect couplets that became widely recited. She gained quite a devoted following. This Blythe has remarkable talents under Fake Theus' tutelage. Sage was busy stir-frying while I lounged in the recliner cracking sunflower seeds. These years in the mortal realm, we've grown accustomed to our simple married life. Tall trees catch much wind, this sudden prominence bodes no good, and look, all her supporters are the illegitimate sons of noble houses. The distinction between legitimate and illegitimate heirs is absolute in mortal society. Blythe's ostentatious display stems precisely from her bastard origins. Let's be frank, it's all self-interest. Now that Pseudo-Theus has remade Blythe into such a beauty, can you tell which of her male admirers actually lust after her looks, and which proper noble daughter would ever tolerate her? After hearing my explanation, Sage suddenly looked enlightened and bowed to me. "My lady is truly brilliant. Even in the mortal realm, you'd be fit to rule as a queen or serve as a prime minister." Such flattery. I chuckled to myself, curious to see how Blythe would develop in the future. We continued lingering around Blythe's home in the mortal world, and even started a small business there. Who would have thought the mighty Sage of War would become a chef? With skills like this, we could open a restaurant, but after discussing it, we realized running a restaurant would draw too much attention. What if we eventually leave? Who'd take over the restaurant? Running a restaurant means hiring staff. What happens to these people when we leave? We could just walk away, but what about the restaurant employees? They depend on these jobs to support their families. After much deliberation, we ended up opening a small eatery, Ming's Noodle House. Sage wakes up at dawn every day to prepare the dough, kneading it thousands of times, waiting for it to ferment. The resulting noodles are delightfully chewy and flavorful, drawing in crowds of customers. After just 2 months of operation, Sage was already getting fed up. "Darling, kneading dough every day isn't hard work, but it's dreadfully monotonous. A decade in the mortal realm is but a day in the celestial world, but since we're in the mortal realm now, we must follow its rules day by day." I gently reasoned with him. "My love, do you truly wish us to relive that agony of nearly being torn apart by life and death again?" Sage froze momentarily before pulling me into a tight embrace. "Never again, my heart. I won't speak such words anymore. We'll keep a close watch on Blythe together." Wrapping my arms around his waist, I chuckled. "Don't worry, we've got each other. When things get overwhelming, we'll just step out for some fun. I've recently discovered how fascinating the mortal realm can be. All these delicacies we'd never get to taste in the celestial realm." Sage playfully booped my nose. "As my lady wishes. No wonder immortals always threaten to banish each other to the mortal realm when they mess up. Being mortal is the real trial. You've got to fend for yourself in everything." After keeping tabs on Blythe for over half a year, Sage and I couldn't take it anymore and fled to the demon realm. Vala's given birth, and its twins. Kale was grinning from ear to ear after we saw the babies. He finally frowned when we were alone. "What's wrong with you people? Even the goddess and war deity have grown careless, and it's only been a few years in the mortal realm. You actually sneaked out instead of watching over Blythe." Sage and I exchanged awkward glances. The mortal realm was just too dull, so we thought we'd wander around a bit. "Besides, you've just had the babies. We rushed here to deliver their 1-month celebration gifts." Kale shot Sage a glare. "Stop loafing around and get back to your kitchen duties. Damn it, you knew all along." Sage punched Kale in frustration. "Turns out this guy often accompanied Vala to the human realm for fun. After all our hard work, you couldn't even lend a hand." Ever since returning from the demon realm, my heart's been pounding nonstop. A constant sense of impending doom lingered in the air. Grabbing Sage's hand, they rushed toward Blythe's location. Blythe was currently attending a high society banquet, an unusual invitation for someone of her illegitimate birth status. Yet her recent meteoric rise in prominence had earned her this unprecedented invitation to the elite daughters gathering. The banquet was nothing but thinly veiled sarcasm. Sage and I concealed ourselves, watching Blythe from the banquet pavilion. Alicia, what's she scheming now? Sage kept her eyes locked on Blythe. I strained to read Blythe's thoughts. When deities descend to the mortal realm, their powers are greatly diminished. Fortunately, I can still hear her conversations with the system. Blythe fumed inwardly. System, you claim all men are born equal. Those nobodies just got lucky with their birth, squeezed up from some noblewoman's womb. What makes them better than me? And now they dare mock me. So that's how it is, I thought to myself. The system replied, want to teach them a lesson? I've got a plan. Spill it already. Blythe buzzed with excitement, clearly having waited for this moment. I listened with a frown as the Theos system revealed its plan: lure Blythe's group to the lakeshore, erase their memories, then have Blythe push them into the water. But Blythe hesitated. This won't kill anyone, right? Relax, the lake's only waist deep, just teaching them a lesson. Very well, I'll coax them over, Blythe declared. As I probed the lakebed with my spiritual senses, the measurements revealed the falsehood in Theos' claims. The lake bottom plunges a full 5 meters deep. 9. Any non-swimmer going down there would surely drown. This fake Theos has become so vicious. Could Theos' previous attacks have twisted it? I told Sage about it, and he frowned. No, we must stop this. Watching Blythe in the distance, we immobilized her, then we used an illusion spell to make her walk into the lake herself. Of course we weren't worried about Blythe drowning. That fake Theos was still with her. It would naturally save her. After this incident, perhaps the fake Theos had given her some warning. Blythe never resorted to such methods again. In the following years, Blythe remained surrounded by the same crowd without making any real progress. Growing desperate, she secretly rallied some young aristocrats to stage a rebellion. These men would flatter her, wine and dine her, and lust after her beauty, but when push came to shove, none dared step forward. A few even double-crossed Blythe. In the end, Blythe was captured. Execution in 3 days. Sage and I stood invisible outside the cell as Blythe frantically conversed with the fake Theos. Get me out of here. Think of something. Quick, fake Theos. It's no use. I lost that ability long ago. All I can do now is scheme. Yet I still underestimated this mortal realm. Blythe asked anxiously, will you abandon me? The false Theos sighed. I only have 2 chances to choose. This time, I can only perish with you. Blythe flew into a rage upon hearing this. It's all your fault. If you hadn't forced yourself upon me, I would have married, had children, and lived a peaceful life. I wouldn't have been beheaded, and my family wouldn't have been dragged into this. Sage and I exchanged a glance. Let's go, Sage. If Blythe remains desireless, that fake Theos can't touch her. He's just reaping what he sowed. I sighed. Even immortals have selfish desires, let alone mortals. You're absolutely right, my love. Now we can finally return to the celestial realm in peace and start our family. Sage side story. The celestial goddess Alicia wed the demon sovereign Kale. Many immortals considered this a love story for the ages, yet I remained unconvinced. Beneath the cherry blossoms, sipping the sake Alicia and I brewed a century ago, my heart heavy with melancholy. How could Alicia possibly marry Kale? The feud between mages and fairies is ancient history. She knows this better than anyone. The Celestial Emperor has summoned me multiple times over this matter. Alicia was always so sharp-witted. How could she grow so foolish these past decades? The more I drank, the more tears began to flow. The mighty god of war actually wept on the wedding day of goddess Alicia and demon lord Kale. How utterly ridiculous it looked. Weeping uncontrollably, I eventually drifted into sleep. Then came a most peculiar dream. Alicia kept calling my name beneath the cherry blossom tree. Sage, Sage, it's me. Alicia, rubbing my eyes, I murmured, Alicia, in confusion. When realization struck, a surge of anger rose within me. She said coldly, both the celestial and demon realms are at your wedding banquet. Even the heavenly emperor, despite his reluctance, sent immortals out of respect for your status as the goddess. What kind of spectacle are you making by being here now? Though my words were stern, I couldn't help feeling a secret delight. Had Alicia finally come to her senses? Did she run away from her own wedding? Decades ago, she'd impulsively stormed into the demon realm searching for Kale, brazenly clinging to Kale despite his betrothed. To my shock, Kale fell for Alicia at first sight, even willing to wage war against the divine realm, just to make Alicia his bride. Thinking Kale meant to forcibly take Alicia, I crossed blades with him. To my surprise, Kale was no match for me, and I was just about to take him down, when Alicia stabbed me in the back. Just thinking about it still makes my blood boil, but out of respect for our years of friendship, I simply cut ties with her without saying much. Were she not Alicia, I would have shattered her immortal bones long ago, condemning her to live as a beast. Sage, I truly am Alicia, though only a wisp of my soul remains. I'm fading now, and just wanted to see you one last time. The Alicia before me spoke, her eyes brimming with sorrow. My drunken haze lifted instantly as realization struck. Wait, you're saying the one who married Kale in the demon realm wasn't the real Alicia? Alas, Alicia sighed mournfully. I don't know how it happened. When I awoke, something had taken over my body. I watched helplessly as it mimicked my every mannerism, no matter how I tried to reclaim my form. Some invisible barrier repelled me, even my magic was gone. I had no choice but to follow its every move, shadowing it wherever it went. When it ignited the celestial demon war, I tried to intervene, but my efforts meant nothing. When I saw her betray you, I stepped in front. Never thought it'd actually work this time. Alicia smiled bitterly. My spirit was nearly extinguished. Only this wisp remains, but thank the stars you're unharmed. Now I understood why Alicia's apparition looked fainter than ordinary spirits, and how I'd survived what should have been a fatal ambush. Comparing it to Alicia's previous deterioration, I finally understood. Tell me quickly, Alicia, who is she, who has taken over your divine form? How can I bring you back? I asked frantically. Alicia shook her head with a bitter smile. It's no use, we can't win against her. This woman has Thea's protection. Whatever we do is futile. With those words, she vanished into thin air. I woke up drenched in sweat. I rarely dream, but whenever I do, trouble always follows. Since it concerned Alicia, I used a strand of my primordial soul to divine Thea's will. Who would have thought I'd uncover such an earth-shattering secret? I once read of an ancient forbidden ritual, sacrificing divine flesh to Theas, using flesh as the offering and obsession as the path, to summon Thea's judgment in this lifetime, but the sacrificer would be utterly annihilated, their divine essence extinguished. With my body as the vessel, I could summon Theas. Yet all it brought was the demise of false Alicia and counterfeit Theas. The real Alicia still wouldn't return. My goal is to bring the true Alicia back, so what should we do? At that moment, all the cherry blossom petals fell, fluttering and dancing through the air. Fallen petals are not heartless things, they nourish the earth to protect next spring's blossoms. I pondered silently, falling to the ground, nurturing the flowers. This cycle repeats endlessly. My eyes lit up with sudden understanding. Then, I summoned Theas with my primordial spirit and made the sacrifice. My soul wish, through endless cycles, may the true Alicia return. A time-worn voice echoed, as you will it.